Good afternoon, and thank you for attending this meeting of the Council. Please note that the meeting is being live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel, and I welcome members of the press and public who may be viewing this meeting remotely. We now move into the formal business of the meeting. Can we take the notice convening the meeting as read? Do we have any apologies for absence?
Yes, Madam Mayor, we have apologies from Councillors Graham King, Mason Gage, McKeith, Rowntree, Tye, Stewart, P. Walker, Williams, Wilson, Vera and Councillor David Snowden may be late to the meeting due to another commitment. And also Alderman Forbes and Tate have submitted apologies.
Thank you. Are there any further apologies?
Madam Mayor, this is just a quick thing. I'm still rather ill, so I might go in and out of the meeting quite often. So I'm here just because I want to be here. But just in case people wonder about my health, I'm okay. I just will go in and out. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Niall Hudson's running late, but will be here.
Thank you. The next item is the minutes of the meeting of the Council held on the 18th of September 2024. Before the minutes are considered, it has been drawn to my attention that when the minutes of the extraordinary meeting of the 14th of August 2024 were agreed at the last Council meeting, it should have been highlighted that Councillor Scanlon's attendance had been omitted from the minutes. Please could members now note that correction. Councillor Fletcher.
18th of September and I wasn't. I should be in the apologies.
Noted. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Harry and I are both in as attending the 18th of September and our apologies were in for that meeting. Thank you.
Noted. Thank you. Not working.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll use this one instead. Madam Mayor, between pages 11 and 13, I think that is completely unacceptable. This is not an accurate reflection of what happened in that meeting. When the Lib Dem motion on winter fuel allowance was withdrawn, Niall Hodson raised his point of order prior to the amendment having actually been voted on and accepted, and that's not what's reflected in these minutes. It looks like what happened was the motion was amended, the amendment accepted, and then the motion withdrawn, but you actually withdrew it prior to that happening. I think these minutes have to be completely rewritten to reflect that.
Thank you. Councillor Mullen, we'll put that to a vote at the end. I just need to get through the rest of the minute part. Thank you. So turning back to the minutes of the 18th of September 2024, with regards to page 7.
Sorry, Madam Mayor. On page 3, Paul Gibson's listed as attending and on apologies. So if he could be removed from the apologies list, please. Thank you.
Thank you, noted. Turning back to the minutes of the 18th of September 2024, with regard to page 7, Councillor Williams has requested me to inform Council that she did attempt to vote in favour of the approval of the Cabinet report. However, her vote was not logged on the electronic voting system. And I also understand that Councillor Mullen, you wish to speak, but is that your point you go across? Thank you. Thank you. And just to note as well, the Alderman.
Madam Mayor, through you, I understand that Alderman Wood and Greenfield were present at the meeting, so we'll log their attendance as well.
Okay, can we agree the minutes?
Madam Mayor, can I just... Madam Mayor?
Yeah.
Can I just have a second? As people are aware, I had a seizure during the meeting. I just wanted to put my thanks to people who attended me. I know, just if you can indulge me, I'd be grateful. So thanks to Kelly. It's Phil here. Phil was here. He did a great job. Thanks to Brandon, who I've never had a conversation with, got in touch, was very conciliatory. Thanks to you. Thanks to my friend Graham, who also got in touch. And if nothing else, my arch enemy, Michael Hartnack, even checked on my health. And Madam Mayor, you've come one step closer to what Alison Smith tried to do, and is to try to kill me. But other than that, thank you for all of your well wishes, your support, and I'm very grateful because it's going to be a long road and it's going to be a tough one. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Brien, and it's definitely not our intention to try and kill anybody. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, can that be minuted?
Thank you. So, Councillor Mullen, you disagree with the minutes of the last meeting and wish to put it to a vote to be amended. Can we put that to an electronic vote?
Madam Mayor, can someone
Yes.
can someone just clarify what Councillor Mullen suggested? I was busy talking to Councillor Leonard, so I missed what the contribution was.
Yeah, Councillor Mullen.
Yeah, thank you. So in the minutes between pages 11 and 13, the minutes reflect that an amendment was put and subsequently seconded, and that the Mayor then ruled that the motion was substantially the same as the previous one. But actually, Niall Hodson raised his point of order before the motion was seconded and voted on, so it was never actually amended. It was discarded before the amendment was accepted. What this suggests is that we voted and amended, which we didn't do.
Madam Mayor, my apologies for the intrusion. There's several members' microphones not working, so they can't vote either on an electronic vote. Thank you.
Can we get the mics checked in the voting system first of all before we go any further, please? Thank you. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On page 10, my name is not included in the councillors who voted for the motion. Where's yours? What, tell it?
Point of order, Madam Mayor. In the interest of trying to save us some time, if what Councillor Mullen is suggesting is clearly just a procedural of the way the meeting went, and it's just accurately recorded in the minutes, well, let's just put our hands up and I'll vote for it and just move on.
Does everyone agree with a hand? Yeah. Can we have a show of hands as to agree whether if the minutes are accurate? With the amendments. With the amendments.
Yeah, with the amendment.
Right, that's agreed. Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. Over here. My name's not on the page 10 either of the people that voted for
That motion?
that motion.
Noted. We'll move on to the next part of the business, but we will check. Yeah, sorry.
Madam Mayor, through you, we will check the voting record, and if members spot in the minutes that their name's missing, if they could notify us in advance, we will check the electronic voting record in advance. Otherwise, I would simply assure members we will check the record after the meeting. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Do any members have any interests to declare?
Councillor Checker, Councillor Hodson and Councillor Walker. Thank you.
Councillor Checker?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'm sure it will be unlikely that it will come up, but clearly there is a motion on respite care in Sunderland that we're going to be debating, may have reference to the previous provider, which was Grace House, of which I am a trustee. I've taken advice that unless the debate goes in a way that we're not expecting, this is about the future provision, so it's unlikely that I would need to leave the room, but I am declaring it at this point.
Councillor Hodson? Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Mayor. The same point, item 10, I'll be removing myself from the meeting as well, as I work for a gambling company. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank those members who have given notice of their wish to speak. Where notice has been given, the member will be invited to speak at the appropriate time. If any member who hasn't given prior notice wishes to speak at any point during the meeting, they should please raise their hand to indicate and speak when invited to do so. Now I understand that the Council has received an award. Councillor Harry Truman, do you have something to present to the Council?
Thank you. It's on. I'm delighted to be able to present you with this award and to the Council. On the 16th of October 2024, the Sunderland Armed Forces Partnership won the Working Together Award at this year's Soldiering On Awards in London. The Working Together Award honours a group of people, team or organisation that has successfully taken a collaborative approach to supporting the armed forces community, and I was immensely proud to receive this award alongside the partners on behalf of the whole Armed Forces Partnership. And we need to remember, Madam Mayor, the Merchant Navy as well. Before I go on, that is the award that we won, a bit like an Oscar, certainly better than an Oscar. The partnership, coordinated by the Council, was recognised for providing wide-ranging support for those serving in the military and the 11,000 veterans, colleagues, that are living in Sunderland. The Armed Forces Partnership, the work that they do has included making Sunderland one of the very few cities where no veterans are street homeless, which is testament to the hard work of our partner, our organisations, and with swift and effective support which is provided by those in need. I am also delighted to inform you, Madam Mayor, that last week Sunderland City Council received the revalidation of its Gold Award from the Ministry of Defence Employers Recognition Scheme. This award is valid until December 2029. The Gold Award is the highest badge of honour for those employing and supporting the past and present members of the armed forces and their families. And to achieve gold, the organisation must demonstrate exceptional commitment to supporting the armed forces community. We have also encouraged organisations in the Armed Forces Partnership to go for gold as to speak. And I am pleased to say the majority have either achieved gold or are submitting an application next year. As a city, we are hugely proud of our connections with the armed forces. and we recognise and value the enormous contribution that serving and former personnel make to communities across our Sunderland. We have a strong network of organisations, including the Sunderland Armed Forces Partnership and Veterans in Crisis, which work hard to support our armed forces and veterans living in our city, as well as their families. This includes helping to make the transition into and out of military service as smooth and easy as possible, so that serving members of the armed forces and veterans don't have to fend for themselves. We see this Gold Award as a testimony to the hard work going on across Sunderland to support our armed forces and veterans and celebrate their contribution to our city. Just before I end, Madam Mayor, a couple of thanks. First of all, to Jessica May, our officer who works tirelessly to keep the organisations together and to support all of our associations. Also, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, you may remember a past leader, Paul Watson. I was with Paul when, all them years ago, we visited an event and Paul signed the first Army Armed Forces Covenants on behalf of the city. And that start of that journey, Madam Mayor, was actually, it brought us to where we are today. And lastly but not least, our current leader of the council, Councillor Michael Mordy, who is a real support and always has been of our armed forces. And it is an honour for me that Councillor Mordy has asked me to take up and continue to work as the Armed Forces Champion for Sunderland. And of course, every colleague that supports the armed forces and veterans, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Truman. That concludes my announcements. We will now deal with the notice of motion, which is titled Short-Term Respite Care in Sunderland. Councillor Mullen, before you read and move the motion, I understand that you wish to make an alteration to the published motion, to which Council will be asked to agree. Could you outline the alteration, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. These relate to the fact that the motion has been on the agenda for 10 months and the wording is now out of date. So the amendment is to replace set to open in summer 2024 with the words originally advertised as opening in summer 2024 but subsequently delayed, and then further down in bullet point 1 to add the words wherever possible, so that it reads ensuring future decisions regarding short-term respite care arrangements are, wherever possible, discussed with members, service users and as part of the scrutiny process rather than being decided at executive level.
Does Council agree to that alteration? Councillor Mullen, can you read and move the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The transition from Grace House to the newly acquired Red Gables site, originally advertised as opening in summer 2024 but subsequently delayed, will see parents of disabled and vulnerable children go without overnight support for a number of months. Members agree that, in future, the Council must better prepare for its provision of short-term respite care, including overnight care, as some families are now being removed from one site of provision to another for the third time in 7 years. Council therefore agrees to a package of measures designed to improve the care and support available to disabled young people whose disabilities are not catered for by existing services, including ensuring future decisions regarding short-term respite care arrangements are, wherever possible, discussed with members, service users and as part of the scrutiny process, rather than decided at executive level, that families and children displaced from Grace House are made priority for placements at Red Gables, and that these should be offered on a like-for-like basis, and that a wider review of respite care is undertaken to ensure that a range of support, including overnight breaks, after-school weekend and holiday and inclusive play and support groups, is available for different types of disability and special educational need. A report following this review should be presented to Children Learning and Skills scrutiny. Council also agrees to request the Director of Children's Services to present a report to scrutiny on how staffing, recruitment and retention needs for the new Red Gables facility will be met in advance of it opening.
Councillor Reid, do you second the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'll second the motion and I'd like to speak immediately after Councillor Mullen. Thank you.
Councillor Mullen, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. This motion has been waiting for public discussion for almost a year now, and whilst the Council waited for planning permission to be granted to the Red Gables site, there have been further developments in the suffering of the families. In that time, the parents of the disabled children most let down by the termination of services at Grace House have had to wait for the news as to whether future respite services in Sunderland would be provided at the level that they require. During that time, in what was already a difficult enough circumstance, the families have now had to endure the public comments of a member of Reform Party and an elected town councillor referring to their children on the planning portal as a social experiment and stating explicitly that they would not be welcomed by the community in East Rainton. The original timeline suggested that the council would have secured an alternative to Grace House a year ago this month, but in reality the families have had to make do with poorer alternatives. Personal assistants who don't offer actual respite care, a respite service in Darlington, an 80-mile round trip, which has called parents in the middle of the night to come and collect their child. In one instance, a child displaced from Grace House has been cared for in an elderly person's end-of-life care facility. The Council has to accept responsibility for this and endure the shame that comes with it. But the purpose of this motion is to ensure that families in this situation never have to face this circumstance again. Through better scrutiny, better user engagement, and a wider review of respite care services offered within Sunderland, our hope is to address the injustice that occurred to these families. To that end, the motion also proposes that, where practical and where desired, the families most affected over the last 12 months are at the front of the queue when Red Gables eventually opens. And it's also important that we consider the staffing arrangements there to ensure that members of staff who will be looking after the children have the right skills to do so on the basis that is required for it to be genuine respite. I hope that all colleagues will be able to support what seems to me to be a reasonable request. And thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, when we last spoke on this in the Chamber, I really thought we'd gotten through the difficult decisions, that we as a council had agreed that we'd made some mistakes and that we could learn the lessons of the instance which had occurred. How foolish of me, because this Red Gables plan and application has been delayed and delayed and delayed, and this motion has in turn been delayed and delayed and a deal. I don't think ironic really describes the situation. Our motion originally said that the Red Gables site was opening in the summer of 2024. Our motion mentions that some families, some disabled children will have to move to 3 different sites within 7 years, and it says that some families will have months without respite care. Well, since that time, so here we are in the winter, still hasn't opened yet. Some families will have had 4 different respite care provision locations within 8 years, and the parents will be counting it in years, not months, the gap between respite care provisions. Now, Councillor Mullen mentioned that it was this time last year that the Grace House site was closing, and I remember that day because I was out there in the bitter freezing cold with disabled children and those families, with the media, trying to drum up attention to what was about to happen to these families, what this council was about to do to those families. 365 days and counting of piling the uncertainty onto these families, and certainly that these families do not need, because they already have a difficult life managing a complex child with complex needs. Now, I mentioned in my speech last time that there was a stolen summer, that we had stolen summer 2023 from these people because they were campaigning to raise awareness on this issue. Well, in that time, not only have we stolen the summer, we've stolen the autumn, the winter, the spring, another summer, another autumn, and who knows how many more seasons this council will steal from these families before it actually gets rectified. Now, I made a point in my speech last time that I did not blame any Labour councillors in particular, because I genuinely believe that they did not have any part in how it started. But I made the point, which is that we decide how it ends. And it's still going on. It hasn't ended. When will this situation end? Now, bullet point 1 in this motion, or as I like to refer to it, the bare minimum bullet point, because it beggars belief that it needs to be said out loud, let alone put in black and white writing, that we should consult with the families before we make decisions on the respite care services that they provide. Why does that need to be written down? Because it wasn't done in this instance. It was not done in this situation. Now, as I did last year, I've heard stories from the families that have been affected by the situation. And I've heard harrowing tales. I've heard a harrowing tale of a family that is genuinely considering putting their child up for adoption because they cannot deal with the complex needs without the respite care that's been provided. Are we part of an institution? Do we want to be part of an institution that forces mothers to give up their children because we aren't providing the services as a council that we should do? So I'd just like to say, you know, anyone who votes against this, anyone who amends it, that waters down the spirit of this, the details of this, should really look these families in the eye when you make these decisions. Because if you're going to spit in these families' faces, at least do it in person. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are there any amendments?
Excuse me, Madam Mayor. I think I should declare an interest in this particular item on the agenda.
Through you, Madam Mayor, if Councillor Dagg could just explain the nature of the interest, please.
My cousin's grandchild is one of the children affected.
Are there any amendments? No. Would anyone like to speak on the motion? I believe prior notice has been received from Councillors Hartnack and Dixon.
Councillor Butler. Councillor Scott. So, Madam Mayor, the speakers are Councillors Hartnack, Dixon, Butler, Scott, and there's a right of reply to Councillor Mullen.
Councillor Hartnack.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've been moved to speak to this motion today as a consequence of my exposure as a councillor supporting a carer and resident in my ward through the challenging and relenting process of trying to gain recent access to respite services offered by this council. No mother ordinarily expects or plans to deliver a baby with complex needs, the impact of which is absolutely life-changing, to the extent that most of us can't possibly imagine. Family life becomes hard and relentless, feelings of inadequacy as a parent, often forced to give up careers in order to care, constant sleepless nights and relationship breakdowns, and endless fights with the very authorities who should be helping. These are but a few of the challenges facing parents of these special children for whom we have a collective responsibility in a civilised society to support. Sunderland Council, without doubt, failed to demonstrate any commitment when they were apparently taken by surprise by the cessation of the overnight respite contract with Grace House. That was a year ago, and to be totally honest, we should expect far more of our council services than to be caught out by failing to succession plan for service continuity for our most vulnerable residents. This was an appalling executive decision with no advance notice to elected members of this council. It was only through the tireless and determined campaigning by former councillor Pamela Mann and her team, supported by councillors on this half of the chamber, including Liberal Democrats, that the council was shamed into doing something with some urgency, hence the purchase of Red Gables, which is going to take the best part of another year to be brought into service. In the meantime, the provision for our young people and their parents has in many instances, as has already been pointed out, been woefully inadequate, with proper respite provision being denied to many of those parents and young people. I do, however, welcome the decision to develop Red Gables, and to be fair, the Council and Together for Children have eventually got their act together to make things happen, especially through the planning process, despite some quite disgusting online comments made by an elected Reform Party town councillor suggesting that special children receiving care and support at Red Gables should be considered a social experiment. Shame on him. I support this motion, Madam Mayor, in its entirety, as does my party, and urge the Council hierarchy to reflect and learn from their failings in this instance, which impacted on so many vulnerable young people and their families. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Dixon.
Thanks very much, Madam Mayor. The circumstances leading up to the transition from Grace House have been well documented and mentioned again tonight, and clearly brought anguish and grave concerns to the families so affected. I would like, in my brief contribution this evening, to move forward to the Planning and Highways Committee meeting held some weeks ago, where the application to use Red Gables in East Rainton was finally discussed after much delay. Having spent many years on planning committees, this application was one of the most memorable and moving that I've experienced. It was actually an example of planning at its best, with open discussion in public from all sides of the argument. Indeed, several residents plus councillors, whether from Hetton Town Council or on this council, made their cases, with those from elected members displaying contrasting degrees of effectiveness and, as we've heard already, sensitivity with their contributions or lack of it. However, the whole tone of the meeting suddenly changed when those with family members who are disabled and vulnerable spoke, and the impression they made by outlining their own personal experiences of looking after their loved ones and how desperately they needed overnight support transcended all the numerous pages of the written word. And of course, they were speaking for many other people too who were there at the meeting. As Pam Mann, ex-Conservative councillor, and Deborah Charlton, daughter-in-law of ex-Labour councillor and former mayor of Sunderland, Brian Charlton, spoke so eloquently and movingly, quite frankly, you could have heard a pin drop. The objections to the application, in my opinion anyway, dissolved and disappeared into insignificance. Every member of the Planning and Highways Committee voted in favour of the application, and many of us spoke openly in its support. Really, as much as you would try to envisage the difficulties such people face in their lives, day by day, week by week and beyond, to actually hear it firsthand leaves a lasting impression. And it is the same here now. What I like to say about our motion that we're considering today is that while it is an essential and well-constructed part of the procedure, there are no words that can possibly adequately describe the real-life situations faced by the families we are supporting here to try and ensure they do not have to go through what they've had to endure since the move from Grace House. I believe all the points we raise are sound, caring and constructive. And I hope all elected members can vote for our motion for the sake of all the families who deserve not only our support, but also our total respect. Thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Some very passionate speeches by members of the Conservative group, Madam Mayor, and many of the points, I do take many of those points. A couple of issues, mentions there was no alternatives, and then there was a mention that those alternatives were poor. There can't be poor and none at the same time. All families were offered respite. I will take it that some of those respite situations were not identical to what they received at Grace House. And certainly if we could have provided that, then I would have personally guaranteed that would have happened. If so, we had that option, Madam Mayor. Regarding the delays are, when you look at the laws around planning, I think many of us have served on the planning committee, and I have served as the chair of planning committee, and it can be extremely frustrating. And if only we could cut through some of that bureaucracy, Madam Mayor, that these families who were clearly suffering could have had less of a delay. I won't politicise this issue because it's an issue that should absolutely not be politicised. This is about some of the poorest and most vulnerable citizens of this city, and we need to target our resources at those people. What I will do is utterly condemn some of those remarks about those children. I think they were vile, disgusting, and not too dissimilar from 1930s Germany. What I will say, Madam Mayor, is that the situation has moved on significantly. Yes, it's taken time. We have gotten there. We have to follow the law. But we don't in any way, underrepresent the suffering that some of these families have taken. What I've done, Madam Mayor, since coming into this role a matter of months to ensure something like this doesn't happen again, or certainly prevent the chances of that, is I've requested the Council scope out other areas for more provision. So not only has this been an issue for many families, but I've requested more provision so that succession planning can take place and we can offer this to more families, not just the amount before, but even more. Councillor Hartnett rightly says there was an issue with the respite care. I don't recall a single email from any of the Conservatives on this issue, and I would welcome any contact at all. You all know I'm available. We all get on, and I will do what I can. We're a different cabinet now. We're under different leadership, and you can contact us despite what relationships have happened before. You know that. We're collaborative. I think some of the motions represent that tonight. What I can guarantee to the residents of this city and families of this city with children with such complex disability is that I will wholeheartedly stand behind them and fight for what they need and what they deserve as taxpayers of this country, and we'll give them whatever we can, and certainly within a timely manner as well, Madam Mayor. But in terms of the reference of this motion, we can't agree with that because it does mention that families were left without respite for months, and we know we offered respite to every family. We offered respite. Not identical, granted, but that is not true. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify, Madam Mayor, we will be voting against this. Thank you.
Councillor Scott.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'm delighted that there's now a significant light at the end of the tunnel for the families affected by the closure of Grace House, as planning permission was unanimously granted a few short months ago, as Councillor Dixon alluded to previously. I wholeheartedly echo the comments that have previously been made by Councillor Mullen and Councillor Hartnett and Councillor Butler regarding the comments that were made by a town councillor. I called this out at the planning meeting at the time. I'm going to call it out again. These comments are absolutely abhorrent. These children require our absolute care and deserve that from our city, and I'm very glad that we will go ahead and provide this going forward. Councillor Dixon absolutely nailed it in terms of the context of that planning meeting. Again, it was truly remarkable and will live with me for quite a while. The family spoke very candidly and movingly about their experiences and spoke and delivered that with the greatest dignity, and I'm delighted that it was given unanimous approval. I do hope that the new facilities will prove to be an upgrade to what was provided by Grace House, and I'm looking forward to it being right at the centre of the Hetton ward. Thank you.
Councillor Mullen, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It all seemed to be going quite well until that last sentence, Michael, I have to say. I do welcome the new cabinet and new political leadership. I'm wearing Michael Mordy's badge up here, which he gifted to me. I think there is a distinction to be made, though, in what you said. The respite care that wasn't offered was the overnight provision, and not all families received that, and that's what's referred to. The daytime provision isn't strictly respite. The peers going in don't actually allow the parents to leave, so that the parents aren't getting the respite break, which is referred to. So if that's your only gripe with the motion, I would ask you very quickly to reconsider while I'm talking, because they weren't all offered that, and they all did need that overnight care for the parents to actually leave the child with somebody, and what the council offered in every case wasn't that. So if that's the only issue, please do reconsider. I accept fully what you said about the delays in planning. Not suggesting that that was anybody's fault. There was an issue with land ownership. That was a technical matter. It would be helpful if planning was less bureaucratic and if we had a more streamlined planning system, absolutely, and this would have got through quicker. And we're not suggesting that any Labour councillor at all was against it at the time of planning, and would therefore welcome what Councillor Scott just said about welcoming in his ward, given what some of those town councillors said about the community not welcoming these children. I think it's notable that there was only one objector who said that, and not the other residents from the area. And in particular would welcome what you said, Michael, about the succession planning and going out for more provision around the area to make sure that this doesn't happen again. But I will just finish on saying that if your only problem is that definition of respite, please reconsider, because there was no overnight respite care offered to all of the families, and that's what this is about. It's the short-term break respite care. Not everybody was offered that by the council.
Madam Mayor, I don't think I have any right to reply, but I'm happy to say that all families were given individual assessments for their needs at that point. And whatever came out of that assessment, they were offered. Sometimes it's not what the family truly wanted, but we've got to provide what the experts and what the evidence says for that child and family. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We will now move to the electronic vote on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If the officer could open the vote, please. The vote will be closing now. If the officer could close the vote, please. There are 17 votes in favour, 1 abstention and 44 votes against, and so the motion is defeated.
The next item is the reception of petitions. Do any members have any petitions to present?
Councillor Tobin. Councillor Haswell.
Councillor Tobin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The residents, the residents of Otto Terrace in Oakwood Street in Sunderland request that we look at extending the parking management scheme to their area to prioritise the needs of those residents. It's signed by the residents of these properties and I have it here. Thank you.
Councillor Haswell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just a quick query. I submitted 3 petitions at the first 2 council meetings this year, which still haven't come back with replies. And I was just wondering, I know Councillor Mullen asked, I believe, last year about petitions taking quite a while to reply. Is 9 months the normal? Because a few years ago, we used to go 3 to 6. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haswell. We'll deal with that outside of this meeting, put notes to receive the petitions. Thank you. Can we agree to refer these to the appropriate chief officer? Thank you. The next item is questions from the public. I will now read out the questions that we have received. So question 1, Council YouTube channel. This question has come from Rob Harrington and I believe the leader would like to respond. Apologies. Rob Harrington, a resident of Sunderland, has submitted the following question. Why are the general public not allowed to comment on the council's YouTube website? If this council is all about transparency and communication with local residents, what is it exactly that you're worried about? Or are you all just scared of criticism? Leader?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I would for his question. The live stream is in effect an extension of the public gallery for members who can't physically make it to City Hall to watch the proceedings online at home or wherever they are. The Council absolutely encourages feedback from its residents. We undertake numerous consultations throughout the year, and if Mr Herriton has any feedback on this meeting from any councillor, our contact details are available. The only point I would make in general, Madam Mayor, there's a difference between feedback and abuse, and that needs to be minded in a lot of the comments that's aimed at not just my group, but all elected members across the chamber. We're all open for feedback and constructive criticism, but oftentimes it does lead to abuse, and we have to be mindful of that. We're all public figures, but we shouldn't be subjected to the levels of abuse and intimidation that some of we got. But saying that, if Mr Herriton does want to feedback on any proceedings today, my email address is on the website. I'll be happy to hear from him. Thank you.
The next question is facilities for cyclists. And this question has come from Helmut Isaacs. He's a resident of Sunderland and he submitted the following question. Although cycling is promoted in Sunderland city centre, there is a lack of facilities for parking cycles in the city centre. Does the council have any plans for increasing the facility for cyclists, especially around the Bridges shopping centre? Councillor Lindsay Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Helmut for the question. We recognise the need to a modal shift away from the private motor vehicles, especially for short journeys and commuting. The provision and location of cycle parking will form a key aspect of our developing movement strategy for the city. This will complement the ongoing delivery of millions of pounds of high-quality cycle infrastructure across the city, in addition to existing secure cycle parking at St Mary's multi-storey car park. A new cycle hub has been introduced as part of the new station car park at Homeside. As a part of future mobility hubs across the city, the council will introduce further facilities that will include secure and modern cycle parking. Thank you.
The next question is pedestrianisation of Marine Walk, and I believe the question has come from Sam Johnson, a resident of Sunderland. Can the portfolio holder provide an update on the proposed pedestrianisation of the Marine Walk and commit to a meaningful progress having been made ahead of summer 2025? And I believe Councillor Lindsay Leonard would like to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for Sam for the question. Due to the popularity of the seafront, there are competing demands for highway spaces at Marine Walk. Officers have discussed this in detail with ward members, resulting in summer surveys to understand the pedestrian movements. Following on from this, a further meeting was convened with members and it was agreed to carry out engagement with both residential and commercial properties along Marine Walk to better understand their parking and servicing requirements. Officers are also aware that some of the buildings are currently in development and as a result, the views of these owners are currently being sought. Once this information is collated, officers will reconvene with ward members to present the results and develop some options for consideration and consultation. Thank you.
The next question is regarding the traffic lights and traffic flow. And this question has come from Robert Usher, a resident of Sunderland, and he submitted the following question. Traffic lights have been off at the south side of Weymouth Bridge. I'm linked to lots of other driving instructors online. The traffic flow with the lights off was much better. It took me 15 minutes to travel about 800 metres last week when they're normally on. Can I ask for a review of the traffic lights in this area? It would be environmentally much better as everyone is sitting with the engines running. Lights off was much better for traffic flow. And again, Councillor Lindsay Leonard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for Robert for the question. The Council recognises that traffic flows did seem to improve whilst the traffic lights were not operational. However, this did have a detrimental impact on pedestrians who were unable to use the controlled crossing to enter and leave the city at the Weymouth Bridge. The pedestrian crossing facility is an important road safety feature, and due to the high volumes of traffic that use the junction, removing the traffic lights is not a feasible option at this time. Thank you.
Is in regard to Sunderland Police Office, and I believe this question has come from David Usher, a resident of Sunderland. When our police station was closed by the Labour Police and Crime Commissioner, our Labour councillors insisted that we would have a police office to replace it, so it didn't matter and the public would still be able to access the police. In the last 24 months, how often has the police office actually been open to the public, and how many officers are based there? Isn't it obvious that Labour are just making us more unsafe? Councillor Kelly-Checker, I believe you would like to reply.
Third time lucky. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to David Usher for this question. Whilst the estate management of Northumbria Police is a matter solely for them, I can advise that the Safer Sunderland Partnership works strategically to ensure all agencies work collaboratively, ensuring, as far as reasonably practicable, the safety of residents in the city. The existence of the SAIL team positioned in High Street West and highly visible and approachable in the city centre is an additional resource from the local authority, Northumbria Police and the Violence Reduction Unit, and they work together to tackle crime, serious violence and antisocial behaviour, delivering on improved outcomes, enhancing the feeling of safety to city centre users. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The next question is Tyne and Weir Pension Fund Investments, and this question has come from Paul Wasnop, a resident of Sunderland. Sunderland City Council is to be congratulated for its low carbon action plan, and in particular their aim for their own operations to achieve net zero greenhouse gases by 2030. Hopefully councillors are aware that the Tyne and Weir Pension Fund, which is contributed to by council staff and also indirectly via the employees' contribution by all council taxpayers in the city, currently has around 340 million invested in fossil fuels, one of the largest such investments in the UK. The council's plans for net zero are therefore impeded by this investment. Can the council tell me and my fellow residents what steps they are taking to persuade the Tyne and Weir Pension Fund to disinvest from fossil fuels by 2030 at the latest? And I believe Councillor Alison Smith, you would like to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Paul, for the question. As you are aware, significant work is underway across the city as we work hard together towards our ambitious goal to be carbon neutral by 2040 and within the Council by 2030. South Tyneside Council is the administering authority for the Tyne and Weir Pension Fund and operates this service for around 200 employers, including Sunderland City Council, the other Tyne and Weir local authorities and Northumberland County Council. In making investment decisions, the pension fund is under a legal obligation to make financial returns its primary and overriding objective. Notwithstanding this, the pension fund fully acknowledges the importance of climate change as one of the largest challenges facing the planet and as a significant financial risk to the fund. The pension fund fully accepts and embraces the investment opportunities from the transition to renewable energy and other climate solutions. In November 2021, the members of the Pensions Committee approved the fund's first climate change policy and net zero targets, including adopting a net zero 2050 or sooner ambition. At that time, less than 10% of UK pension funds had made climate commitments. To help with achieving its climate targets, the fund has set out a net zero roadmap, which has been published online. This sets out key strategic actions and objectives. One of these actions is for the fund to undertake an annual carbon footprint exercise. The most recent assessment, as at the 31st of March 2024, shows that the fund has reduced the carbon footprint of the investment portfolio by over 42% in the last 5 years. This means the fund surpassed its first interim target, which was 30 to 35% reduction, 2 years ahead of schedule. The fund has also reduced its exposure to fossil fuel companies to approximately £262 million over this period, which amounts to less than 2% of the overall pension fund. The progress to date in reducing the carbon footprint of the investment portfolio shows the fund's commitment to being a responsible investor. Other key strategic aims for the fund are to capitalise on the investment opportunities arising from the transition to more suitable energy, and to engage with companies ensuring they have appropriate transition plans. Within the fund's private markets programme, commitments totalling £665 million have been made to the Border to Coast Climate Opportunities Fund in the last 3 years. This fund has a focus on renewable energy, energy storage, technology and green transportation. The pension fund has also made other significant commitments to renewable energy through its infrastructure programme. The pension fund does not adopt a policy of blanket divestment from fossil fuel companies. Blanket divestment is considered to be a flawed approach, as it would not necessarily see a net reduction in carbon emissions, as the emissions are simply passed on to the next investor. Rather than adopting an approach of blanket divestment, the fund prefers to try and drive change through active engagement. As long-term investors, the pension fund chooses to use the strength of its voice, working alongside like-minded investors to influence companies' behaviours. The pension fund believes that engagement can secure lasting, positive changes that will make a real contribution to achieving the low-carbon transition the world needs. However, where it is considered that certain companies do not have a credible net zero transition plan, the fund's investment managers will engage in dialogue and divest from that company if acceptable changes are not made. We support the actions being taken by the pension fund in this important area and are assured as to their commitment to tackle climate change. The Council has representation on the Pensions Committee, and we are committed to ensuring that our voice is heard. Our views are factored into decision-making on an ongoing basis. This includes the pension fund continuing to treat climate change as one of its key priorities. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The next question is environmental services, and this question comes from Stephen Pounder, a resident of Sunderland. Having recently had cause to contact environmental services, a freedom of information request was made for copies of written site reports. This was to include time and dates of the visit. The reply received stated that no written reports were made and no time and dates recorded of the site visit. Surely in line with the Council policy of transparency and accountability, such details should be recorded for members of the public to access. Councillor Lindsay Leonard, I believe you would like to reply.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Stephen for the question. Service requests to local services are received digitally, and where necessary, a member of the team will inspect, log digitally any action or response required against this request. This creates a record against the address and location of the original request. An individual written report or photographs are not always undertaken when dealing with service requests. In this circumstance, there does appear to be an anomaly with respect to the original request and the subsequent freedom of information request. And as such, the service is more than happy to have a discussion with Mr. Pounder to clarify the matters directly with him. Thank you very much.
And the next question is around community parking management schemes. Francesca Napier, a resident of Sunderland, has submitted the following question. Residents living at the edges of the community parking management schemes in Thornhill and Millfield, for example, Otto Terrace and Milburn Street, are facing increasing problems with many non-residents' cars parking all day. The council has said for the last few years that it will review existing permit holders and consult on expanding them. Can the portfolio holder say when we can expect the consultation to start, how long it will take, and when a decision will be made on the new expanded zones in Thornhill and Millfield? And I believe Councillor Lindsay Leonard would like to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you to Francesca for the question. Community parking management schemes help address commuter parking problems and afford residents some priority to park near their home. These schemes have proven very popular with communities over the years and have largely been well received. Following the completion of a successful programme, officers are currently finalising a new programme for delivery from April 2025. Whilst it is not possible to commit to scheduling any specific schemes at this time, residents should be assured that this will be given priority with a view to a programme being agreed and shared early in the new year. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move to the questions from the members of the council. I believe the first question is going to be asked by Councillor Hunter on most vulnerable residents.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Can the leader outline his Cabinet's plans to help and support our most vulnerable residents and households, particularly pensioners, who might be facing challenges with their fuel bills this winter? Thank you.
Councillor Jones, I believe you would like to reply.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. As City Council, we always recognise and strive to help and support our most vulnerable residents and households. Thousands of residents have already benefited from council distributed household support fund payments through the cost of living crisis. Now assistance is being made for pensioners who might be facing greater challenges with their fuel bills. Myself and the leader were able to announce the Sunderland Fuel Fund last week, which is a fund for this winter with payments going to pensioner households that already receive council tax support or housing benefit but do not receive pension credit. Those eligible will receive letters this month from the City Council and will receive payments automatically of either £200 or £300 from the City Council's Sunderland Fuel Fund. The fund itself is expected to benefit over 5,000 pensioners, and payments are being made with £610,000 from the government's allocated household support fund, topped up with £300,000 from the council. It's also important to mention that since July across the nation, there's been a 152% increase in pension credit claims. And I would encourage residents, whether they're young or old, that they can always seek welfare advice about the range of support that's available. And we have information on our council website to help. So thank you, Councillor Hunter, for your question. I'm sure you'll agree that the news of the Sunderland Fuel Fund has been and will be warmly welcomed across the city. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
And the next question is regarding Crown Works, and I believe this has come from Councillor Haswell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now that the Chancellor has re-announced the £25 million funding for the Crown Works studio developments, the same money announced by the former Chancellor in May, also re-announced by the North East Mayor in August, when can residents expect to see shovels breaking ground at the Crown Works is in progressing with what is a very exciting development? Thank you.
Councillor Johnson, I believe you would like to reply.
I've got an announcement, actually. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, we're all really excited about this project going forward, and I'm sure the same as Councillor Haswell, we can't wait to see Pallywood start to rise from the ground. Great project for the city and the region. But just to confirm, Crown Works, the original £25 million was from government that was announced by the previous Conservative government. But this wasn't budgeted for, and we've had to make sure that the current Labour government that's come in has had to make sure that money is still there and provided for. But also, there's a separate money coming from the North East Combined Authority itself, which is another £25 million So that's £50 million in total that's coming into that project. So fantastic news for the City of Sunderland and the region as a whole. And I'm delighted obviously to say that the Council is in the process of concluding the tender for the selection of a contractor to undertake site enabling works in preparation on the site, which, subject to a successful conclusion, we should hopefully see that preferred contractor commence works in January 2025, if not sooner. So fantastic news for the City, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just as a quick follow-up, can I just ask what assurances we do see? I know obviously we're breaking ground in January, but assurances, especially with the phases 2 and 3, that we don't end up with another teaswork situation here in Sunderland, with ever increasing sums of money being announced, but little activity happening on the ground. So what more assurance can there be? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's take one step at a time. But obviously this is going to be fantastic for the region. I mean, 8,500 jobs, which is going to help create, when it's all up and running, 8% of these will be in manual trades, electricians, hair and makeup, logistics. And this is going to benefit not just people in that world, but right across the city and loads of different job roles. And it is forecast that up to £2 billion economic benefit will be coming to the region when it's up and running. So let's just take one step at a time and make sure it all happens. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
The next question is regarding £2 bus fare, and the question has come from Councillor McDonough.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Would the Leader of the Council please explain how the Labour government's scrapping of the £2 bus fare limit, meaning that bus fares will rise by 50% in the city, will hit the poorest in our city who rely on bus travel more than any other? Can the Leader also explain why a worker using the bus in this city will now be forced to pay up to an extra £40 a month just to go to work?
Councillor Lindsay Leonard, I believe you'd like to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor McDonough, for the question. The original cap on single bus fares was due to come to an end anyway in December 2024, with no further agreement or funding in place. The recent announcement as part of the autumn budget sets out a revised single fare cap of £3 to ensure that millions of people can afford bus fares and have better opportunities all over the country. Those fares that currently are below the £3 threshold will only be allowed to increase by inflation, meaning some fares will still remain below this cap. It is important for cities like Sunderland, where there is a higher dependency on public transport. This announcement forms part of a £1 billion investment in buses, and the Council will work closely with the combined authority to look at reforming and improving bus services across the region for the wider benefit of residents and visitors. Thank you.
Supplementary, Madam Mayor. Yes, how does this decision marry up with our regional mayor's passion to increase bus usership? And do you feel that this will make bus usership rise, fall or stay the same in the city?
Thank you. Well, I'm not a transport expert, so I can't say whether or not it will rise or fall. But it is disappointing that the government, the outgoing government, failed to plan for projects they committed to. So it's no surprise they haven't made any provision for those that haven't got any commitment. We will continue to work with the Mayoral Authority to review arrangements for routes and fares as we move to support more sustainable transport. And if you want to have any input in the Mayor's transport plan, you can go to northeast-ca.gov.uk, and the consultation is open and it's open now until the 26th of January. I'm sure she'd be thrilled to hear your views, Dominic.
The next question is regarding Wembley Way, and the question has come from Councillor Torben.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As reported on the front page of the Sunderland Echo on the 17th of October 24, our very own Wembley Way is largely in place over the River Wear and preparing to open next year. Can the Leader outline the wider economic benefits this will bring to the city and how this transformation of Riverside and Sheepfolds would unlock further investment and regeneration?
Councillor Johnston, I believe you'd like to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Tobin, for the question. It really is fantastic what's going on in the city at the moment, and delivering against the Riverside Sunderland Master Plan is progressing at pace and has already resulted in significant regeneration with over £500 million of investment in developments which are currently under construction in the area surrounding City Hall, with high-quality new leisure food and beverage facilities have opened on Keele Square and Sheepfold Stables, with additional venues to open soon, enhancing the experience for residents and visitors alike. The new Weir footbridge and enhanced infrastructure and public realm will connect new residential communities at Vaux, Founding Row and Sheepfolds, where significant public and private sector investment is supporting the delivery of around 1,000 energy-efficient new homes that will be available to rent and buy. This aligns with the Council's objective to repopulate the city centre and increase day and nighttime footfall and expenditure in the local economy. There's already been significant investment in a new business district where 1 million square feet of modern office space, culture house and the new eye hospital will create up to 10,000 new jobs and underpin the economic growth of the city centre. Smart city technology is also transforming public services, supporting the growth of local businesses and driving innovation in a stunning Riverside Park and new walking and cycling routes that will attract more visitors, increasing dwell time and connect people from all our communities within the city centre. It'll be easier for people to attend major events on either side of the river as well at the Stadium of Light, from football to music, and also the opening match of the Women's Rugby World Cup in August next year, as people are able to move freely around Riverside, Sunderland and take advantage of everything that our businesses, culture and leisure facilities have to offer as they move on to Wembley Way, hopefully with those red and white strips, going to see Premier League football again back in the city next year. The creation of a vibrant, well-connected city centre offer is key to attracting further inward investment and growth, providing high-quality digital-enabled environment where people can live, work and play, and businesses are really passionate and really want to come and invest in Sunderland. They can see what we're doing, and hopefully that momentum continues long into the future, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Next we have AV in City Hall, and I believe the question has come from Councillor Wood.
IT expert on the list.
Easy, Tiger. At the most recent East Area Board, we had the pleasure of young residents pitching their excellent ideas for funding. However, that experience was marred by woeful technical problems that made remote access comically embarrassing. While I understand the Chair is following up on this issue, can the leader give assurances that as a digital city, the issue of inadequate IT capability in this very building will actually be resolved?
Councillor Smith, I believe you would like to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Wood. I do have a prepared response, but after hearing that you're an IT expert, I query whether you've engineered tonight's situation to enhance your question. However, ICT services continue to work with the audiovisual suppliers for City Hall to ensure the equipment is appropriate and suitable for the various meetings and conferences that the equipment is required to support. Technicians are now available to support the setup and operation of meetings, and testing is ongoing to ensure hybrid meetings in the Council chamber function without issue. And I give you my assurance that I will pursue this and see where we can go. Thank you very much.
Follow-up question, Madam Mayor?
This is expertise.
Again, easy to he has one incident and then suddenly he's the boss. Is this support available out of hours? For example, we were in a meeting at about 5:30, 6 o'clock. If IT is only available between, say, 9 and 5, who is supporting?
In the corner, answer over there.
Weren't available for East Area Board. As that added point.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, obviously I was going to point out that they are available tonight, but I will look into that and get some answers. Thank you very much.
Next, we have a question regarding the winter fuel allowance, which has come from Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. During the debate on winter fuel allowance, the leader suggested he would use the Labour Party conference as an opportunity to lobby for a change to the government's cut to this benefit for over 42,000 residents of the city. What conversations did he have, and with whom did he have them?
Leader, would you like to reply?
Madam Mayor, and it was great to be in Liverpool despite the weather recently for the first Labour Party conference of a Labour government since 2009. And it was a joyous occasion, meeting together across the Labour movement with colleagues from the trade unions, from our socialist societies, from members up and down the country, as we plan to look forward to what the next Labour government over the course of the next 5 years is going to do. I had a number of meetings with MPs, with ministers, with special advisors, on a whole host of issues that were pertinent to the city. Councillor Johnson's mentioned that the Crown Works studio funding was of a particular concern. We're aware that the previous government in the March spring budget announced the 25 million, but we came into power in July, found that it was just that, an announcement, there wasn't any budget allocation. So we had to ensure we put our case forward to ensure we received that funding alongside the additional 25 million that the mayoral combined authorities. We've got 50 million now of public investment in that, and we're cracking on, and we will be on site in July. We also had the situation of the Washington Town Board. The previous government promised the town of Washington £25 million, and
what has this got to do with the question Anthony's asked? This is a party political stunt. What the leader has become pretty renowned for. His party politics is not interested in the factual basis of this question. So please, Michael, answer the actual question.
Councillor O'Brien, at the bottom of the question it does state what conversations did he have and whom did he have them with?
Madam Mayor, I was asked a specific question. What conversations did I have at party conference? With whom did I have them with? I am now detailing with who the conversations that I had. I was there it was a long week and we had very many conversations. I was privileged to speak at a Key Cities Fringe event with the local government minister, Jim McMahon, and we put the case for a revision of council finance, and I was pleased to see that the Chancellor got up in her budget recently and loud and clear told the country we are not returning to Tory austerity. A significant investment in council budgets. We are now waiting for the finance settlement, which I expect will be a very positive finance settlement. And on the specific of the winter fuel allowance, again, we had numerous conversations with ministers, with MPs and with special advisors. And I was delighted to see, Madam Mayor, we've announced the Sunderland Fuel Fund, that the government have given us £1 billion across the country, extension of the Household Support Fund, enables councils like us to provide that support to the most vulnerable pensioners in society. I'm clear that this council will use the resources we have to protect the most vulnerable, but we will also work and use any opportunity and any platform we have for the betterment of the city. We've received 25 million for Crown Works, 25 million for Washington. We've got an increase in council finances. It was a very successful Labour Party conference.
Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very sorry nobody listened to him, but he shouldn't let that discourage him, and he should continue. The scheme that he's announced locally will only help 5,000 people. 37,000 will get no help. Can he outline what further lobbying he's going to do on behalf of those 37,000, who he'll have those conversations with, and what he's going to do this time to make sure they do listen?
Leader.
Madam Mayor, as I said, we are confident that the scheme we put in, it helps the most vulnerable. The decision to remove the winter fuel allowance as a universal benefit was done because the previous government left a £22 billion black hole in the country's finances. Difficult decisions are going to be made. And I've said this to residents, to my colleagues, to my group, to others. We've got 14 years of incompetent, government, from the Tories and the Liberals. We are not going to turn this country around in 1 year, in one budget. This is a decade of national renewal, and I can absolutely say with certainty that when we go to the country again in 2028 or 2029, people's lives in Sunderland will be universally better at that point than they were in July 2024. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. The subject is Morby, and I believe this has come from Councillor Laws.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, TV architect and Washington lad George Clark is relocating his education charity Morby to the city, and has stated that the catalyst for moving it to the North East was its lead role in this year's Washington 60 Design Challenge, which saw schools across the town participate in a competition that marked the 60th anniversary of the new town where he grew up. Does the leader agree that this is fantastic news for Washington and the city?
Councillor Johnston, I believe you'd like to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Laws, for the question. Working in partnership with education charity Morby as part of the Housing, Innovation and Construction Skills Academy, Riverside, Sunderland, is a really exciting step for the city. I think we would all agree that our young people can be a real source of inspiration for many of us in terms of their ambition, ability, creativity and achievements, whether in our approach to low carbon through the Young People's Environmental, Green and Sustainability Group, or through the Washington 60 Design Challenge that's been highlighted by Councillor Laws. It is essential that we harness and enable the abilities of our young people and work with partners from all sectors that would make a real difference to our city and create opportunities across our communities. And this just goes to show the real importance we have when we come together and celebrate our history and heritage and culture, not just bringing the community together, but also the fantastic benefits it also provides for the economic growth of our city as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. The next question is the mayoral precept. The question has been asked by Councillor O'Brien. I will be reading the question out on behalf of Councillor O'Brien. With residents already facing significant tax hikes and wage compression due to policies from the Labour government, can the leader of Sunderland City Council confirm whether they would support the introduction of a mayoral precept and how this would affect the financial burden on local taxpayers? Leader, I believe you would like to answer the question.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, I don't know what world Councillor O'Brien's living in, but the current Labour government, we've just introduced a pay rise for 3 million workers on the national living wage. We came in to office and resolved long-run disputes, so teachers, firefighters, nurses, doctors all had seen a significant increase in their pay. In terms of workers' pay package, there is no increase to income tax or national insurance, so no worker will see an increase in the taxes in their pay package. In terms of the mayoral precept, it's not something I would support. There's no plans to do it, and anyone who says so is not telling the truth.
Would you like to reply on that?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just a follow-up question. Although he's living in cloud cuckoo land when he says national insurance and employees will not affect the laws paid in our society, the OBR has said it will. Taxes are up under Labour, but will he outright say no to any mayoral precept at any point during his illustrious only 2-year term?
Madam Mayor, the exact same question. But my answer is there's no plans to introduce a precept. It's not something I would ever support. End of story.
Thank you. The next question is long-term parking of motorhomes. And I believe Councillor Mullen, you'll be asking the question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Lynn Vera has been approached by residents regarding the long-term parking of motorhomes around coastal areas of Roker and Seaburn. Some vehicles have been parked up for most of the summer in free residential parking bays taking up 2 spaces. Parking is a premium and there is little regard for residents who live there. Can the Cabinet member explore introducing a time restriction for motorhomes from out of the area, as in other parts of the UK?
Councillor Leonard, I believe you'd like to reply.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Vera for the question. I'm mindful of residents' concerns and the negative impact indiscriminate parking can have on local communities. I have asked the highways officers to contact ward members with a view to undertaking some seasonal surveys to understand the nature of the problem. Any proposals will be subject to consultation to ensure that any scheme has the full support of members and local residents. Thank you.
Councillor Mullin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And more broadly, the Council's current policy is that there's no cap on the number of caravans or motorhomes that can be parked on residential streets. So there's an increase in the number of them being moved from caravan parks into residential streets. My ward, for example, has got one street with 5 on at the minute. Will you review this policy so that we don't have streets full of caravans?
Thank you very much. Yes, we will.
I now call upon the Leader to move the report and the supplementary report.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The Cabinet report is fully set out. There's 2 items this month: the Gambling Act 2005, approval of the Council Statement of Principles, the Budget, Plan and Framework and Medium-Term Financial Strategy 25 to 26 to 28 to 29. The documents are fully set out. They've been through the various Council subcommittees, including scrutiny and licensing and regulatory. Fully set out, Madam Mayor, so I so move.
Deputy Leader, do you second the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I second the report and reserve the right to speak.
Leader, would you like to speak to the Cabinet report?
As I said, Madam Mayor, 2 items, all fully set out. So move.
Deputy Leader, would you like to speak to the report? No. Sorry. I understand that Councillor Edgeworth wishes to move a reference back on item 1 of the Cabinet report regarding the Gambling Act 2005, approval of the Council Statement of Principles. Is that correct, Councillor Edgeworth?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to move a reference back.
And who would like to second the reference back?
I'll second that, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Edgeworth, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'd like to move a reference back to the Gambling Statement of Principles. We think it should go back to the Cabinet for further consideration. While our group agrees with a lot of what is contained in the Statement of Principles, I fear that the policy approach penalises, stigmatises and attempts to denormalise a normal legitimate activity and tries to stymie people's ability to make their own choices about how they spend their money and how they enjoy their leisure time. Once again, it seems this council is overstepping the mark. It looks to be an unnecessarily paternalistic, sneering, nanny status attempt to try and solve societal issues for which it's not responsible and which it cannot solve. It's clear from the submissions in the document that the policy has been full of sweeping, discriminatory and unevidenced statements which ignored the fact that most people gamble responsibly, unproblematically and safely. And while some of these references have been removed or amended, it indicates the bias inherent in the Council's approach to developing this strategy. The tone seems to be one that looks down on people who choose to go to their local bookies as a problem to be solved or managed. Comments from the Deputy Leader seem to imply that the Council should take a we know best approach and try and limit the choices and freedoms of residents living in the most deprived areas of the city in a way that they wouldn't dream of doing about our middle-class suburbs. I think it's patronising, it's paternalistic, it's overreach, and I think it's wrong. It's not the place of this council to tell residents what they should and shouldn't do. It's not the place of this council to try and dictate to deprived communities and limit their freedoms. My other big concern is that this council seems to be, in a bid to be seen to be doing something, thinking without, not thinking through the full consequences. The statement doesn't make reference to preventing online harms, and I think we need to be realistic and not fall into the trap that pretending that a zealous public health approach to this can solve the societal problems, when in reality all it will do is drive these problems underground into regulated spaces. As the consultees in the document themselves said, the policy targets physical premises which employ local people and which offer at least some level of scrutiny and care for their customers, especially regulars who staff in betting shops get to know. And I think by penalising gambling premises like traditional community bookies, the number of which are already dwindling, all this policy will do is drive people to online gambling away from any supervision whatsoever. I don't think the council should be agreeing a statement of principles which could drive people away from the regulated setting of the local bookies and driving them into the unregulated online market. So we'd like the Cabinet to look again at this document, to get rid of the kind of sneering authoritarian tone in its approach to regulation of gambling premises, and to reassess whether this statement of principles will do more harm than good by driving people into unregulated online spaces. So I think it's time to ditch the patronising paternalism, look again at this policy. If the reference back isn't successful, then the Lib Dem group will have a free vote on adopting the main report. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fagan, would you like to speak? Would anyone else like to speak on the reference back? Okay. Leader, would you like the right of reply?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Just to Paul makes legitimate points, deeply held views, I believe. But the time to make them was during the consultation, the time to make them was in the scrutiny committee, the time to make them was in the licence and regulatory committee, and them deeply held, sincere beliefs could have been debated and potentially it could have included changes in it. Coming to council at the last minute with them is just not acceptable. So I would ask colleagues to vote against the reference back.
Thank you. We will now vote on the reference back.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If the officer could open the vote, please. And if the vote could be closed now, please. There are 15 votes in favour and 44 against, and so the reference back is defeated.
Do any other members wish to speak on the report? If so, please raise your hand and identify the item number.
Madam Mayor, we have received prior notice from Councillors Edgeworth, Mullen and Dixon to speak on the second item on the Cabinet report.
Councillor Edgeworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just moving to part 2 of the report on budget planning. Obviously, this was adopted before the Chancellor's budget on the 30th of October, and I think despite all the talk we've just heard about how great that budget was, it seems to us that austerity remains alive and well for local councils under this Labour government. Just wondered if the leader or portfolio holder could give us some updates about how this planning might have changed following the budget on the 30th of October, and how the capital strategy may need to be updated in light of this new Labour age of austerity. Specifically, it would be useful to know about employers' national insurance rises, which are going to be disastrous for small businesses across the city, but how will this affect arm's-length council organisations like Together for Children and SCAS, and what assessments have been made about the knock-on impact on finances for extra costs associated with dealing with contractors in the private sector in areas like social care. Additional grant funding in the budget was obviously welcome, but the LGA, the Local Government Association, says that councils needed at least 2.3 billion just to stand still and maintain services at the current level, and the government's offer falls short of what is required. And if this was a Tory budget, I feel the Cabinet would be saying exactly what I'm saying, aimed at the Tory group. The reality for councils still seems fairly bleak, and local people are still worried that councils will only be able to continue delivering services through big council tax rises. So does the leader or the portfolio holder have any message for people worried about council tax rises as a result of the budget? And what will the knock-on impact on the capital programme be as a result of this latest budget? Thank you very much.
Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a remarkably similar point to Paul Edgeworth, who has obviously also been listening to Kemi Badenoch at PMQs. The impact of employers' NICs on the council might be offset by a grant or exemption, But as I mentioned in scrutiny last week, the impact on the private sector providers that the council uses, particularly in adult social care, as Paul said, will lead to this tax increase being passed on to the council by the back door. The LGA Labour Group, as Paul has just referred to, has agreed a statement in which it has said that the £600 million extra for councils in the budget will likely be wiped out by this move unless there is additional discrete funding. So it's a case of a budget which gives with one hand but takes much more away with the other. What actions, or perhaps I could say, what conversations does the leader intend to have, and with whom does he intend to have them in respect of this, and what representations will he make to government for more money around these pressures?
Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mine's just comments, really. It's the Conservative Party's in a new position at the moment. We've got a new leader, and if you could bear with me, I'm just going to do a little bit of summary of what we have contributed to Sunderland, which is outlined in this report. We are looking at a new leadership of Sir Keir Starmer, which has been a very faltering leadership to start with. And I'd just like to perhaps outline that despite very little publicity given to the fact and credit given, the Conservative government from the past few years has put a lot of money into Sunderland. And I'm referring to page 132, 4.1.1, which is in the heading of UK government funding and regional funding. And there's a preamble as about how the grants were given by government departments, and there is a list. And on page 133, there's mention of the Sunderland UK Shared Prosperity Fund Investment Plan, and the Economic Prosperity Scrutiny Committee, which I'm a member, was given a report by senior officers at the last meeting about the projects that had been passed and granted, and the aims were exactly the same: to make the city dynamic, healthy and vibrant. Indeed, the report indicated that the funding from the British government, as opposed to that from the EU, gave the city greater autonomy in the decision-making process, which was welcome. And I think we've got to pay tribute to council officers for their expertise in being able to obtain the funding for government with their bid process and successfully promoting the funding projects for the city, which of course we hope will pass the test of time, and also pay tribute to those who do the same for the charity groups. I might be an exception to the rule, but I've never been particularly bothered about which government supported Sunderland with capital projects, whether Labour or Conservative, so long as the city prospers. But over the years, I have noted it's been a great ordeal for the leadership of the Labour Council to promote our city by underlining, or even at times even mentioning, support from a Conservative government. Sunderland has certainly changed greatly from the derelict Vauxhall site, plus the vast open spaces in Pennywell and Ford, where council housing was demolished and land left vacant for years despite the housing shortage. I understand that's not a council issue, but it was Sunderland. The impact of the world economic crash that was felt for years and the billions spent on COVID, Sunderland up to a few weeks ago when a new government was elected is totally unrecognisable for those years gone by in terms of capital expenditure, where government money has helped new projects such as housing with Homes for England, the High Street Funds, plus the Levelling Up programme, which I see for myself every day when I go to Muller's for bread and George Franklin for meat in Villette Road. Add to that, we've been bombarded with very mixed, politically charged messages, especially from the previous leadership. I hope Councillor Mordy takes it on a bit better, although we have got a Labour government, of course, when the council really confused the many people of Sunderland, because one minute we were down on our knees and the next minute all this wonderful work was happening, and nobody knew really where we stood. It couldn't have been that bad, because private investors would not have been involved in starting up their businesses or companies in Sunderland, nor a major private investor becoming involved in the financial arrangements for the construction of City Hall and other office blocks. I clearly recognise there are many issues and problems facing thousands of our fellow citizens but we are addressing here a specific part of the Council's work, so it's good to read the many positive aspects of this report, and I'm very pleased that my Conservative Party played a not insignificant part in helping that take place. Thank you.
Deputy Leader, do you wish to speak?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Leader, do you wish to exercise your right of reply?
I do, thank you very much. Madam Mayor, the budget, like in every year, once the Chancellor presents the budget statement, we have to wait for the detail of it to come out. We're expecting some policy statements from the various directors coming out by the end of November, and the actual detail from the figures in mid-December when the local government finance settlement is released. That's the same as it always is. So we are now planning the budget on some assumptions until the detail comes through there. So effectively all the comments and questions that were legitimately raised, we will be starting our own budget consultation as a council soon, and that will all feed in to a budget that will go to Cabinet in January and then to Council in February. But just to be clear, the government announced a 1.3 billion additional grant funding for local government, including 600 million for social care. And the government state, I'm reading again from the pre-prepared script that Kia sent up to us last night. We will deliver a significant real terms funding increase for local government next year, including 1.3 billion of additional grant funding to deliver essential services with at least 600 million in grant funding. The point is, this is going to be a one-year settlement. We were clear when we came in, we need to look under the bonnet and find out what the issues were. We're hoping when we get to the spring budget in March, early next year, the spending review, that we will then move to 3-year funding settlements. The Chief Executive was in London yesterday, a number of meetings in the Treasury and MHCLG, putting these points. We are plugged in to Sagoma, to key cities, to the various other. So like I said in the previous answer, we're not going to solve the City Council's issues, we're not going to solve the country's issues in one budget or 1 year. We are embarking on a decade of national renewal. We've got a full 5-year Parliament, and as I say, when we get to the end of the Parliament, I am confident that the City Council's finances will be in a much better place than they were in July 2024. The lives of the people of Sunderland will be better. We'll see significant further advancements of our regeneration programmes. So, as I say, the points that are made, legitimate, well made, feed them into the budget setting process. The budget will come through the scrutiny process. You'll have an opportunity to ask the detailed questions there. I'm more than happy, the door's open. If you want to come down and chat through the details with myself, with Alison, with any of the Cabinet members, come and have a chat. The officers likewise, their doors are open. If you have specific questions, I understand the officer groups have pre-budget planning meetings, so all the questions that you ask can be answered there. But as I say, this is a 5-year programme. We're not going to solve the problems in one budget or 1 year. This is a long-term project. Thanks for that, Madam Mayor.
Do you accept the report of the Cabinet? We will now go to a vote of the Cabinet report. This to vote. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If the officer could open the vote, please.
Madam Mayor, can you? Does this include the gambling part of the? Can we take that as a separate vote?
Sorry, I thought it...
Yes, we can do it in 2 separate parts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So, Madam Mayor, the first vote would be on the Gambling Act statement.
I'll vote no. How are you voting? Yes.
No, I voted yes.
Right, I'll vote yes, same as my ward colleague. Right.
So if the vote could be closed now, please. There are 44 votes in favour and 15 against, and so Cabinet's recommendation on item 1 of the Cabinet report is carried. So, Madam Mayor, the second vote will be on the finance proposals. So if the officer could open the vote, please. Madam Mayor, for the benefit of the councillors joining the meeting, there is a vote running on the second recommendation of the Cabinet report, which is in respect of the finance proposals.
No. Yeah, I voted no.
And so if the officer could close the vote now, please. There are 52 votes in favour and 12 against, and so the second recommendation is agreed.
The next item tonight is a report of the Leader on special urgency decisions. Leader, would you please move the report?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I so move.
Deputy Leader, do you second the report?
I second the report, Madam Mayor.
Does Council agree to receive the report? We will now deal with the notice of motion, which is titled Policy on Acceptance of Gifts by Councillors. I have agreed to read the motion on behalf of Councillor O'Brien, who will then move it. To uphold ethical standards and maintain public trust, the Council proposes the following policy regarding councillors' acceptance of gifts. Number 1, value limit on gifts. Councillors shall not accept individual gifts valued over £50 from any individual or organisation. Additionally, cumulative gifts from the same source must not exceed £100 per civic year. Secondly, prohibition of gifts from contractors. Councillors are prohibited from accepting any gifts from any company or stakeholder with existing or pending contracts with the City Council. This includes associated subcontractors and affiliates. Thirdly, disclosure requirements. All gifts received by councillors must be recorded in a public register within 3 working days, regardless of value, to ensure transparency. Nominal value items under £10 may be reported quarterly in an aggregated summary. 4. Implementation and review. This policy will take effect immediately upon approval. An annual review will be conducted by a designated review committee, which shall be politically balanced and include an independent person to ensure impartiality. No chairperson shall receive any extra special responsibility allowance for these roles. The review will assess the policy's effectiveness, considering factors such as the number of gifts recorded in the register, feedback from councillors, indicators of public trust and compliance levels, and any identified conflicts of interest or compliance issues. Adjustments to the policy may be made based on review findings to enhance clarity and effectiveness. The review should reference the end of the civic year where relevant. 5. Training and awareness. To promote understanding and compliance, all councillors must complete mandatory ethics training on this policy upon its implementation, with training including practical examples and scenarios to clarify the guidelines. Councillor O'Brien, do you formally move the motion?
I know it's a bit which come from me for any ethics training, but yes, I so move the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Edgeworth, do you second the motion?
I second the motion and reserve the right to speak. Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I do, Madam Mayor. Thank you for listening. This motion is... I come up with this motion based upon Sir Keir Starmer's own little incident where he was accepting glasses, gifts and personal arrangements for his son for educational opportunities, what other working class people like myself would not be able to access, especially Gucci glasses and suits. Hopefully Michael Muddy does not accept any suits, although it doesn't look like he does. A joke. Come on, have a sense of humour. I went through everyone's declaration of interest just to see who accepted gifts. And so, behold, the leader of Sunderland Council accepts 2 season tickets and accepted a concert ticket, to which I also went to that concert and paid a handsome sum of £200. He accepted a concert ticket to see the boss, Bruce Springsteen. He could have easily saw Graham at any point. That was his real boss anyway. These sorts of attributes, these sorts of things where you're cumulatively getting gifts, especially gifts what normal people outside of this chamber do not get. You know, my brother, my colleagues at their jobs do not get offered £200, £300 gifts to see Bruce Springsteen. I'm sure if they did, they would take them. However, it's not suitable for a leader of a political party of any colour to be accepting gifts of that value. It's not justifiable. If you can't go to your knock on the resident's door and justify why you're accepting a £300 or whatever accumulation gift it is, you shouldn't be taking it. No one should be taking it. To my chagrin, someone in this council took 6 Sunderland tickets for him and his fellow people who went with him. That is unacceptable. A family of 6 would have to pay upwards of £300 for that if you're sitting in some areas of that football club. That is not acceptable. It is not acceptable to go around and accepting things from charities where you should actually be giving them money, not taking away valuable seating where people would happily donate to sit there. That's not acceptable. None of this is acceptable, guys. I don't see why, when you came into office, I think the Conservatives can probably confirm this. Didn't Sir Keir Starmer say that he wanted to clean up politics? This is not cleaning up politics. This is accepting gifts from companies and institutions, what we have to vote on. By that logic, if we have to vote on something and you've accepted I don't know how much your season ticket is, Michael, or both those season tickets are, but my season ticket and very many other people's season tickets are upwards of £600 per season. So if that isn't coming into factor when you're voting on something, I don't know what is. And if you're trying to explain that to a normal person, that money or that gift, it's not influence your vote, you're in cloud cuckoo land. I know you are. I don't know what you're smoking this evening, but I would like some, because clearly it is something enjoyable. Because it seems like you seem to be going, the Tories were unethical, but it's okay because we're socialists and we can just take the ethicalness out of it. Because who cares if the Tories do it? Because we can do it better. We can rinse them better than what the Tories did. Do you know what? I remember, and God love him, Graham over there, when he was criticising the Prime Minister for taking a jet somewhere, or a private jet somewhere, or something like that. That was unacceptable. This is unacceptable. You might smirk, but it's unacceptable to accept gifts from companies what your residents are not able to do. They're just not. It's not acceptable. You can shake your head all you like, Michael. You can shake your head all you like. What? Laughing at me? Are you laughing at me? Please do. I'm a very funny guy. I'll carry on. Look, it's unacceptable for taking gifts. Don't take them. If you can't explain to your residents, don't take them. I'm looking forward to each and every one of you explaining why you've taken these gifts. Because if it's for civic roles, pay for them yourselves, you get an allowance. Is it for we have to support the football club, pay for yourself, you get an allowance and wage. If it's because we had to be there because it was an event, I don't know, like the 2022 final of the playoffs, what Kevin Johnson went to, don't accept it, buy them yourselves. Buy them yourselves. There is no justification why you should be getting a free ticket to what are exclusive Exclusive.
Councillor O'Brien, 5 minutes is up.
Can I get extension? Yeah, extension. Okay. Exclusive to people. I had to wait in the queue to try and get one. I couldn't get one. How's that fair? Many other people had to wait in the queue and couldn't get one. Not fair. If you cannot justify it, don't take it. How can you justify it? I look forward to your speech and justification, because I'm going to urge all of my colleagues from every party to say, let's not have politics as grubby. Let's do what Sir Keir Starmer says and just get out of this grubbiness of politics. And hopefully, given Michael is a yes man, he might take some credence from his boss, Keir Starmer, and just pay back the gifts he got. And hopefully he will do that. Thank you, Madam.
Are there any amendments? Thank you. Would anyone like to speak on the motion?
Councillor Mordy. Councillor Heron. And we've received prior notice from Councillors Mullen and MacDonough. So, Madam Mayor, the speakers are Councillors Mullen, MacDonough, Mordy, Heron and Councillor Edgeworth reserve the right to speak, and Councillor O'Brien has a right of reply.
Thank you. Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It would be very easy to link this motion to Keir Starmer, Bridget Phillipson and others who have received quite extraordinary freebies in their short time in government and then offered, and I think this is worse actually, the weakest imaginable reasons for accepting them in the first place. But I'm not going to dwell on that because there are some serious points to be made here, and I have some questions for how this motion would work in practice. It's worth saying at the top that the Conservative group does support the motion. I've never liked football, so I'm immune from that particular bribery, and would suggest that these principles, especially around not accepting gifts or hospitality from contractors, should also apply to council officers, and I imagine that in practice this already happens anywhere. A few months ago, under the previous regime, I asked the then Culture Cabinet member about the acceptance of free concert tickets and queried what value was added by members of the executive taking their family members with them to concerts and football matches and so on. The response was that this was to facilitate stakeholder feedback to improve the city's events offer, something that could only be achieved by canvassing the narrow opinion of a very small select group of Labour councillors over a period of years. But when I subsequently asked what had changed because of these insights offered by the children of former cabinet members, it turned out there weren't any. So surely that policy has to come to an end. I do think in this motion that there is clarity needed on items 1 and 3. With number 1, if such a strict limit is imposed, it begs the question, why allow any gifts at all? If a single gift can't exceed the value of £50 and multiple gifts can't exceed the value of £100 within a municipal year, why have any gifts at all? And what do the Lib Dem group think should be acceptable within that? On item 3, the declaration within 3 working days, I think this is badly phrased because it actually represents a backward step. This wording suggests that the gift should only be declared if accepted, which is different to what we do presently, which is declare it if it's offered. So is it the case that the Lib Dems want to declare this within 3 days of the offer? And what would they do if the offer wasn't actually seen until, say, 5 days after it landed in an inbox? Or do they actually only want to declare those gifts which are accepted? That would seem to me to be a backward step. There's also nothing in here about the consequences of not following these rules or what a proposed punishment should be, which in turn then opens up an interesting moral debate regarding councillors on the take. Is it more ethical, for example, to steal than to receive a gift? If, as an example, a councillor is offered a ticket to a private event which has no public funding attached, is that worse than a councillor who, to give another random example, misappropriates their local authority's franking machine to distribute at public expense their political literature? And if if said councillor is ordered to pay something back, having been found guilty of misusing taxpayer-funded resources, but doesn't then do so, isn't that just another way of being on the take? Is mandatory ethics training required for such scenarios? I ask these questions genuinely. As a working class person, I wouldn't know. There needs to be a consideration of whether accepting and not declaring a gift should be considered a more severe transgression than misappropriation of public resources, and if it shouldn't, what's the point in the motion? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm not going to say too much tonight, but just to say I'm very much in favour of this motion because really it puts a line in the sand. How often have we heard on the internet and on the streets and things like that, people saying, you're all on the take, you're all out for what you can get. And I think this would put a line in the sand, which is really, really important. I also support this motion because I care about the Labour members. I really do. I love you all. And I do not want anyone on the street to come up to you and say, Michael, who paid for your glasses? I demand to know. Who paid for your suit, other Michael? I demand to know. This would put a line in the sand and make the public realise that actually we're not on the take, because we know that, but the public need to know that as well. It will put a line in the sand and we would all know where we stand. I think it's sensible. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's sensible, and I really think that we should support this. And if we support it tonight, I think that's a really big signal to the people of this city that they can trust us, because God knows politics doesn't have a lot of trust at the moment.
Councillor Morday, Leader.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And the bandwagons in town, I can see. The council does have a robust system in place. It's had it for a number of years. And to Dominic's point, if we really think we're going to pass this motion tonight and the vial that gets shared on a certain Facebook page is all of a sudden going to evaporate, is naivety in its extremes, because that type of stuff is been there for 20, 30 years. It is, in some cases, I'm led to believe, enabled, encouraged, and by members in this chamber, former members in this chamber. But the situation is we have a robust system in place, and what's being asked up there is completely, it's a solution looking for a problem. For instance, if the mayor was to be out at an event, was given a cup of tea and a cake, organisations often like to invite the mayor and other members in. 3 days in to declare it is just completely ridiculous. And
Madam Mayor, can I just point of clarification? It's a point of clarification to the motion. He's misrepresented.
I understand the motion, Madam Mayor.
Misrepresented. So you've misrepresented it there, Michael, because obviously you're going to vote against it, and that's fair. That is your prerogative. But the motion does outline that any nominal gifts can be quarterly. So that is just complete nonsense there, Michael. Thank you.
Leader, continue. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, because there's a difference between a principled stand about not accepting gifts and not being invited in the first place. Because I checked the Liberals' declarations of interest on the train back from London today, because I was at an event at the Local Government Association conference recently with Councillor Tighe. It was the Community Cooperative Councils Innovation Network and Oxygen Finance event. And the Liberals like to make a big play that we don't accept gifts and we don't accept hospitality. And in full disclosure, Madam Mayor, I went to the event. I had 2 warm bottles of lager, that's all. But who was sitting at a little table with plates of food, numerous drinks? Councillor Edgeworth, Councillor O'Brien, Councillor Fagan. So the absolute hypocrisy to come here and paint themselves as whiter than white is completely ridiculous. In terms of the season ticket, I understand that every leader of the council for about 30 years has been given tickets to the match by the football club. My question would be, why now? Why is it all of a sudden an issue now? Because since I've been the leader of the council and gone to the match, we're top of the league. Make that of what you will. And we've talked about...
Point of clarification, Madam Mayor. We've actually, since Michael's become leader, just a factual thing, we've drawn three games on the trot and we're not top of the league anymore. So
Councillor O'Brien, continue.
My understanding, I think we're top of the league on goal difference, but there we are. But anyway, on goal difference, I think we're number one. So if that was the season would end, we'd be champions. There we are. That's how football works, Stephen. In terms, Keir Starmer's been mentioned quite a bit tonight, and I think it's important just to set on record my understanding of where we are. Because one thing that the current Labour government has done is we've levelled the playing field in terms of how MPs have to declare the gifts. Because in the summer, when there was nothing to report, the press, looking for trouble, looking for things to report, went over the top on gifts and hospitality, because the ministers, the current ministers, who were shadow ministers at the time, had to declare their gifts and hospitality under a different regime, under the members' code. They were often at the same events with their opposition, then Conservative government colleagues, who had to report under the ministerial code, and then they are reported or not reported at all. So we've come in, and now we've levelled the playing field. And I was surprised in the press article when this all blew up, and I think it was either Stephen or Heather or one of the Liberals issued the press release. And they were challenged on, well, wait a minute, wasn't Ed Davey at Taylor Swift?
Oh, was it?
Yeah, I'm not saying. You haven't criticised them. All I've heard is Keir Starmer, Keir Starmer, Keir Starmer. I haven't heard a single criticism of Keir Starmer.
I'll do criticism. Ed Davey shouldn't have taken...
Councillor O'Brien, you'll have your right to reply.
To speak uninterrupted. And we've had other mention, and again, we can have a talk about Boris Johnson and his wallpaper. The loans he was given, but for the avoidance of any doubt, and I cannot see anyone from the press here, but I bought these from Vision Express. This is from Dalton Park. My shoes are from Primark. All bought and paid for by myself. But the issue is, this is the Liberals trying to create a problem when one doesn't exist. Because I've looked at other council leaders around the country, and a close colleague of mine now, Councillor Amanda Hopgood, the Liberal Democrat leader from Durham County Council, numerous gifts and hospitality on her declarations of interest.
Leader, you've had 5 minutes.
Extension, Madam Mayor? Just to sum up.
I'll second that.
So the point is, Madam Mayor, we have a system, it's in place for the Liberal Democrats to pretend they're whiter than white and they don't accept hospitality is complete nonsense, because they were at an event with me in the Harrogate, eating and drinking. So I don't think we need to create this system when we have a perfectly robust one in place. And I'll end on this note, because when this broke, I was like Michael Dixon, I'm a regular visitor to Villette Road, and I bumped into a bloke who voted for Kieran Morrissey. He voted for the chairman of the Middlesbrough Lib Dems. He voted for Washington Steve. And he shouted across the road at me, Villette Road. He says, "Oh, Michael, tell them to shut the completely..." And you can fill in your swear words that you want there. Because the public, and they can say, this is a person who's not a natural Labour supporter. And if they think this is getting the cut through, it's not. It costs no... The season ticket is a gift by the football club. It costs no... They would have a leg to stand on if it was an issue of the council paying for the hospitality, but this is gifts. Oftentimes, when myself or the cabinet members are there, were workmen, were
Leader.
representatives
Sorry,
of
time's-
the council. So in closing, Madam Mayor, this is a nonsense. I'd ask colleagues to vote against it. We have a robust system in place. No need to.
Thank you. Councillor Heron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will be brief as I'm speaking on a serious motion shortly. I've had a cup of tea, Stephen, with the local vicar, and I haven't declared it. Can you forgive me? Right. What I want to say is that we have a very limited time to discuss city and council business. And why are we wasting this time with ill thought out motions and posturing like this? There is a conversation to be had around this issue, but this motion isn't it. And finally, why are we allowing personal attacks under the guise of jokes in the chamber? Thank you.
Councillor Edgeworth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I shall start by mentioning, because I know you're all thinking it, no, I don't have a rich donor in the House of Lords who pays for all my clothes. I agree with Dominic McDonough that this is about restoring trust. We all go into this because we want to serve our communities and our city and make things better for the people who elect us, but I think the actions of the minority do give us a bad name, make it look like we're in it for what we can get for ourselves, and we just shouldn't be taking huge, expensive free tickets or season tickets that other people have to pay for. I think Michael Modi and Councillor Heron's arguments are trivialising this, but I think it is a serious issue that people know it is wrong and that we should just simply pay for things if we want to go to the Stadium Light or go to a concert. I don't think that's a controversial principle to put into place. If Michael Modi has issues about, would it affect accepting a cup of tea or whatever, then let's find a way to sort that out rather than using it as an excuse not to do anything at all to improve our systems. And I agree with Councillor Mullen that we could look at changing this to make it for gifts offered and not just accepted. I think that's perfectly reasonable. This is a reasonable, sensible policy designed to restore trust after some shameful episodes from the leader, from Bridget Phillipson, who, tried to pull the wool over people's eyes by claiming she went to a Taylor Swift gig in her capacity as Education Secretary with her daughter, which is just absolutely absurd. So it's disappointing, if not unsurprising, that the Labour Group won't be supporting this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor O'Brien, you have your right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to come to the point, anyone, whatever party they are, accepting gifts where people have to spend money of their own, unacceptable. Ed Davey, I had a massive debate with Amanda Hopgood. Paul will say this about her going to the Stadium of Light for a mayoral event. I said she shouldn't have done it. She should have paid for it herself, because people like me and over 43,000 people had to pay for it. So why should they be the exemption? It's not acceptable. If you want to go to a football game, pay for it. If you want to go to a concert, pay for it. If you want to see something like Taylor Swift, don't push your own family members under the bus like other cabinet ministers did because, it's because my daughter wanted to see them. I'm sorry, not going to wash. It does not wash with the public, Michael. Your imaginary friend, who you probably saw, God knows where, probably doesn't wash with him either. If you're saying that you're okay accepting your season ticket in your padded seat, it's much more padded than my seat, by the way, is acceptable. I hope you come down to Sandhill with me. Come with me, and I'll bring you to some residents who would like to speak and speak amicably about this, and we'll see what they think. We'll have a straw poll. But it's not unsurprising that a party who wax lyrical over ethics are pretty unethical. Look at their illegal Iraq war, for instance. Pretty unethical there. And I'm not accepting people saying Jemmy Thorpe, okay, fair enough, with the Liberal Democrats, not the Liberal Party, buddy. Different party. Sorry? It's not the same party. No, okay.
Can we stick to the right of reply, please? Councillor O'Brien.
I forgot what I was up to because the gentleman there doesn't quite understand what a merged party is as a new party. Okay, fair enough. Just to go on, just to say, it's just unacceptable. They try and pull the wool over people's eyes, saying they're going to be more ethical. They're not. They're just as unethical as the Tories. They're just as unethical as the previous leaders, Gordon Brown selling our gold, and Tony Blair going into an illegal war. Evil. But to go on to the point as well, people say I shouldn't have criticised Michael's dress sense. As I joked earlier, there is a room for a bit of levity in here. I accepted Alison's joke where she wanted to push me down the stairs. I'm sure that most of you now still want to push me down the stairs, and I'll be leaving here quite soon, so just to evade that threat. But I'm hopeful that some of the members at the very back bench there, I can see a couple, Graham and Fiona, might vote for this. But who knows? Because it's just unacceptable to take gifts, guys, what other people have to pay for. And I can't see why you can justify it. But the Labour Party are very keen to justify the unjustifiable. Anyway, thank you very much.
We will now vote on the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If the vote can be opened, please. And if the vote could be closed now, please. There are 17 votes in favour and 45 against, so the motion is defeated.
We will now deal on the notice of motion, which is titled Dementia Care. I call upon Councillor Gibson to read and move the motion.
Stand up.
I move the motion, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gibson, can you read the motion?
Council recognises the huge challenges we face in diagnosing and caring for those who suffer with dementia. 1 in 3 people born today will develop dementia in their lifetime. The cost of dementia care is currently estimated to be £40 billion a year, and it's forecast to rise to £90 billion a year in 2040. However, less than half the people living with dementia receive a formal diagnosis, and 63% of the costs of caring for someone with dementia is met by themselves and their families. Local authorities have an essential role to play to ensure services provide timely diagnosis and adequate support for those affected by dementia. Furthermore, many council services, from housing to transport, have an impact on people with dementia in their daily lives. Council recognises the need for a dementia strategy for the local authority area to outline what support people affected by dementia can expect from the Council, and to develop a clear plan to improve dementia services. Council therefore resolves to ask the Cabinet to develop a comprehensive dementia strategy with clear timelines, targets and project leads. The dementia strategy will commit to a training programme for all social care staff and establish a pathway to facilitate timely and accurate diagnosis. A public awareness campaign will also be developed as part of the strategy. Council instructs the Chief Executive to establish a working group to assist the Cabinet in planning and drafting the dementia strategy for Sunderland City Council in consultation with those affected by dementia and their caregivers. The Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee should also assist with the development of this strategy. I so move, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. I just want to go back to a quick question what Councillor Wood raised earlier on about the IT sound equipment. Apologies if it was affecting your hearing, but I think it has been resolved now, so apologies for that. Councillor Crosby, do you second the motion?
I second the motion, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to speak. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a bit of personal information. 3 members of my family have been affected by this cruel illness. My late mother, for whom I was a carer for 10 years, an aunt, and a cousin who's now suffering from mild dementia. This motion is based on a template provided by the Alzheimer's Society. The illness extent can be indicated by a few statistics. 1 in 3 people born today will develop dementia. The current cost of dementia care is estimated at £42 billion per annum, rising to £90 billion per annum by 2040. In 2040, 1.4 million people in the UK are expected to be living with dementia. It is the UK's biggest health and social care crisis, and growing larger as more of us live longer. We are not winning the battle, as fewer than 50% of sufferers receive a formal, detailed diagnosis. On the level of individuals, 63% of the costs are met by carers and their families, but the real cost goes well beyond finance. Broken sleep patterns, as dementia sufferers wake up many times during the night, wrecking their carers' patterns. An unnatural life in many ways. When you're a carer and you get your mother to bed and she's asleep, you can't have the television on, you can't have any lights on, it's 9 o'clock at night, you can't get to sleep, and you literally crawl up the stairs on your hands and knees in order not to wake her up and be quiet. Social isolation for the sufferer and also for the carer, hence the need for respite care and daycare centres. You get worn down by repetitive questioning, things that you've told over and over again, often within 5 minutes. Problems compounded by misdiagnosis, particularly as to the severity. More about that later. Matters aren't helped by misconceptions. Alzheimer's itself is not dementia. It's a brain disease caused by plaques on the brain, and the dementia are symptoms. The same applies to the next most common form, vascular dementia, blood not getting to the brain properly. In their early stages, symptoms are mild and people can live unsupported, but they gradually get worse. About 2/3 of dementia cases involve Alzheimer's and 25% vascular. 10% of unfortunates suffer from both. The 4 most common types account for 95% of cases. Councils are at the front line. Ultimately, all departments, not just social services. They all need to be aware of the problem and sensitive to sufferers' needs. Hence the need for a comprehensive strategy with clear timelines, target and project leads. All social care staff should undergo detailed programmes and certain key personnel in other departments. These individuals should be equipped with and familiar with the Alzheimer's Society checklist of symptoms. I have a copy here for anyone who might like to look at it. It's very, very valuable, and even a layperson could make sense of it. And they can then be referred for medical help. The simple list could be used for gauging severity as well, particularly with sight and hearing problems. My mother was diagnosed with severe dementia when actually it was moderate, and it was corrected by hearing aids and similar measures. Excuse me. Public awareness campaigns could and should be launched to make people aware of the problem. Leaflets in libraries, surgeries, community associations, including this checklist to help. There should be a list of council services available, centralised, so people can look at one list instead of having to do what I did, which is literally hunt round them. That was about 17 years ago, so I hope that's changed. So that would be a massive, massive help. In fact, it could even, this campaign to raise awareness, go into schools, as a significant proportion of carers are young people of school age. Perhaps how they can be dealt with could be a motion for a future council meeting with someone. The people in question should be trained in explaining to carers their loved one's plight, the range of services which can be provided by outside bodies such as Dementia North East, the Essence Centre, etc., etc. Now, I recognise this is a huge task for the Cabinet to take on, despite the presence of two distinguished medics in the form of Councillor Checker and Councillor Butler on it, who probably know a good deal more about this than I do. Hence the need for additional assistance, inputs from the Health and Welfare Scrutiny Board Committee, from caregivers and even from those sufferers who are in early stage dementia. So thank you, Madam Mayor, and I think I've said my piece. Thank you.
Councillor Crosby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Honourable colleagues, I'm here today to propose a motion close to my heart, one that urges us to take significant action in support of our city's growing number of individuals living with dementia and the families and carers who support them. Dementia is a progressive illness that affects not only memory, but also thinking, behaviour and the ability to perform everyday tasks. I know from my own experience with my mother, who showed signs of dementia before her passing last year, how confusing and heartbreaking it can be to witness these changes. Often symptoms like forgetfulness, difficulty with planning or problem solving, and challenges with communication, self-care, sleep irregularities, and even visual hallucinations are dismissed as normal ageing. However, without timely intervention, these signs can lead to greater confusion, loss of independence and distress for both the individual and their carers. My mum would call me to come home because she was frightened. It happened a couple of times at these meetings. Early diagnosis and intervention can make a crucial difference with medication and strategies to delay its onset. Yet in our current system, waiting times for diagnosis are too long, and support after diagnosis can be inconsistent. Carers, often family members, face an enormous burden, frequently without adequate training or guidance. Imagine the frustration, even the heartbreak, of seeing someone you love unable to recognise you or struggling with simple tasks like feeding herself, without knowing how to respond or support them effectively. It is clear that carers need more support, including access to timely information, training and respite care to avoid exhaustion, burnout and isolation. Our motion proposes the establishment of a working group tasked with creating a comprehensive dementia care strategy for our city. This group would work to address key areas, including timely and accurate diagnosis, public awareness, staff training, and robust family support mechanisms. We would set clear timelines and measurable goals, ensuring that our efforts translate into real, tangible improvements in care and support. Dementia should not isolate anyone, yet without concerted effort, that is the reality many face. This is an issue that transcends political boundaries and affects us all, regardless of background or belief. Dementia is often called the long goodbye because of the slow, relentless impact it has on relationships. By committing ourselves to a city strategy, we can help to preserve the dignity and improve the quality of life for those affected, while providing a more compassionate and supportive framework for the families and carers who are often forgotten. I urge you to support this motion and make a meaningful commitment to addressing dementia in our city. Together we can build a city where people with dementia, their families and carers have the resources, support and respect they need and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you. I understand that Councillor Checker wishes to move an amendment. Would you like to move that amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we would like to propose an amendment. That is that in the third paragraph, we would delete the word council and replace it with the word local. That we would delete paragraphs 4, 5 and 6 and insert the following paragraphs. That the Sunderland City Plan vision is that everyone in Sunderland will have happy, healthy lives with no one left behind. The Council recognises the excellent work the Ageing Well Delivery Board is doing with partners to ensure all residents of the city have the opportunity to live a healthy old age. And Council resolves through the Health and Wellbeing Board Healthy City Plan refresh and the local ICB Delivery Plan refresh to ensure dementia is a key strategic priority with an action plan co-produced with people living with dementia and their families. I move the amendment, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, would you like to second the amendment?
Yes, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak, please.
Councillor Checker, would you like to speak to the amendment?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And can I thank my colleagues wholeheartedly from across the chamber for bringing this very, very important subject to Council for us today. First of all, I want to give my meaningful commitment, as asked for by my colleagues opposite, in relation to the motion and every single action that you have suggested there today. It's clear that the sentiment set out in this motion is something that we all across this chamber agree with, and we obviously want to all work together to improve the lives of people living with dementia and their families in Sunderland. I'm going to explain why I'm bringing this amendment, Madam Mayor, and it's simply because as part of my work in terms of reviewing the strategies that we've got in this city, I've been working hard to bring all of the strategies under the Health and Wellbeing Board. We've got a refresh of that happening at the minute, and within that, rather than having lots of separate strategies, we will have priorities. These are strategic priorities of the city. It can be seen as semantics, but I think it's really important that we have something here that is meaningful across the whole of the city, not just the council. You mentioned yourselves the roles of the partner agencies in this, including the ICB, the foundation trusts who provide the assessments and diagnosis, the Sunderland South Tyneside Foundation Trust who deliver care. It's really important that those, along with our voluntary and community sector, are all involved in this, and we have to do that strategically through our mechanisms, which is our Health and Wellbeing Board and our local place committee. They are the places that we hold each other to account. They are the places where these boards have that opportunity to influence strategic direction outside of the council, because this is not a council thing. That's why I changed council to local services. This isn't just about council services. This is about all services delivered across the city. And we, you know, the Healthy City Plan, for those of you who sit on scrutiny, will know that already comes to the scrutiny committee. It comes prior to any agreement. It comes at regular intervals. And the Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny Committee can ask at any point for us to come and present updates in between those planned sessions, and we will do that. I think it's slightly disappointing. I've said this before, and I will probably say this again. It's really disappointing that such a vital issue is being raised in this way. I've been in my role now for 4 years. Prior to that, I was the deputy in this role. Not one person has ever come to me and said, can we have a chat to you about your dementia priorities in the city? Not one, from across the other side of the room. I know how much this means to people. It means a lot to me as well. Councillor Gibson knows that I work as a nurse with my other hat on. Some of you may or may not know that my role as a nurse is as a nurse consultant specialising in dementia care. So, you know, this means more. I've dedicated my entire professional career to this. To be able to influence it in my political career is something that I didn't ever imagine I would be in a position to do, and now we can. And I absolutely welcome people from around this chamber's support in doing so. I am here for anybody that wants to talk about things. If anybody is experiencing things that they want to talk about from a personal, professional, political, resident perspective, I'm happy to have that conversation with them. I will provide support one-to-one to anybody that needs it. And like I said, this is the first time that, you know, opening a notice of motion around this, in one sense is, wow, this is amazing. On another sense is, why now? Why here? Why in this way? And I will point out that I would, you know, talk to anyone, and my colleague, Councillor Jones, is going to talk a little bit about this as well, about all the fantastic things that we are doing. And I would like to think, Councillor Gibson, we've moved on a long way from when you first experienced this with your parent, and I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm going to be very honest with you, Madam Mayor. I was at the LGA conference last month, as were some colleagues here, and it was great actually to catch up with some of my friends and colleagues from the Alzheimer's Society who are lobbying. They are lobbying politicians up and down the country and council leaders around their recommendations for a dementia strategy. So, you know, the cynic in me knows that that's where this has come from. You know, I'm surprised I didn't see you there. I spent quite a lot of time. Some of those people I went to university with, some of those people I've studied with, some of those people I've supported. Amazing charity. I was very delighted to speak at a conference for them. And let's face it, that's what this is about. Because if this was something that prior to the LGA conference and those people coming up to you and saying, does your council have a dementia strategy? It hadn't crossed anybody's mind, had it? We have a Health and Wellbeing Board, which is cross-party. The Liberal Democrats have got an appointed...
You've had 5 minutes.
Can I move an extension to the conclusion of the Deputy Leader's remarks, Madam Mayor?
Second that. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. The Liberal Democrats have got an appointed person onto that board. That is the place to influence. That is the place where strategic direction is set in the city, where it's held to account. And that is the place to do this. And that's what I'm suggesting with this amendment, Madam Mayor, is that we keep this in where it already is. It already is a strategic priority. It is being reviewed as a strategic priority at the moment through the refresh, and it will continue to be a strategic priority for both Health and Wellbeing Board and the Place Committee. And I very much look forward to bringing forward the action plan co-produced with people living with dementia and their families. Clearly, Madam Mayor, I'm out of time and I could talk for a very, very, very long time on this. I would want to make just a couple of points more, if you wouldn't mind. That is that our Director of Public Health's annual Public Health report will be coming out soon, and following discussions with myself, my colleagues in the Health and Wellbeing Board, I'm pleased to say that that will be around ageing well in Sunderland, and I very much look forward to reading that. And like I said, we 100% support the sentiment in this motion. I'm trying to keep the strategic priorities of the city where they are. The Alzheimer's Society are supportive of our approach. The ICB is supportive of our approach. The VCS is supportive of our approach. And this is something that I'm happy to continue to work with colleagues across the chamber, because I'm 100% committed that we will do everything we can to ensure that we develop a strategy that incorporates all of the points raised by my colleagues over the chamber, and that I will bring it to the scrutiny committees as we would always do. But ultimately, I want to be judged by the people in our city and our residents who are experiencing this, and that will be when we know we are making a difference for people. One final point, Madam Mayor, if I might, is that I was under the impression we had an agreement that we would stick to one notice of motion per party each. And that is something that I'm a little bit disappointed that we haven't stuck with today, because of I really wanted us to have a really good debate on this, which means that somebody's motion might not get heard today. So in future, I would ask, don't wait for a notice of motion. Come and talk to me. It could be beneficial, could be not. I'm not commenting on that. But it's a plea. It's a plea. You don't need a notice of motion on this. You did not need a notice of motion on this. You could have come to me. Health and Wellbeing Board is strategic, it's public, it's there, that's your vehicle. Councillor Bond is your representative on that, and I'm sure I would have very much welcomed a conversation from any of you. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Does anyone wish to speak on the amendment?
Councillor Bond. Councillor Smith? On the amendment, Councillor Smith, do you wish to speak on the amendment? So, Madam Mayor, the speakers on the Councillor Doncan and Councillor Gibson, you have the right of reply on the amendment. Could I just double check with Councillor Mullen? Has he given prior notice of wishing to speak on the main motion? Do you wish to speak on the amendment? Yes, yeah. So, Madam Mayor, the list of speakers on the amendment are Councillors Bond, Smith, Doncan, Mullen. Councillor Jones had reserved the right to speak, and Councillor Gibson has the right of reply.
Councillor Bond.
First, thank you, and I've not prepared anything on this. It's more in comment about raising things in committees and boards than having a motion to council. The motion to council is more public and has value in that, and I don't see how you can't do both. Thank you very much.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've had experience with Alzheimer. Alzheimer is a living death for the person who is living. Every time you go in to see somebody what's got Alzheimer, it's time for the death for the person who's got to watch them dying. My father-in-law, he was in the area, and he was 16 stone. He had Alzheimer, and people used to take fun out of him, so he stopped speaking for 6 years. Never spoke anything. You had to take him, walk with his hand, walk him round, and he was always frightened. And one day you get called out, he's run away.
Councillor Smith, can I just ask you to speak into your mic? It's just that not everybody can hear what you're saying.
What?
Speak into the mic.
Oh, and of course what happened is he got Alzheimer, and he was in the area, and he was 16 stone, and every time I went in to see him, it was like a living death for my wife, the mother-in-law. His clothes was hanging on to him, and when he died, he was only 6 stone. She had to wash him, she had to feed him, she had to clothe him, she had to wash his clothes, take them back, and every day I took my wife over to see him and the mother-in-law, and eventually he died. And that was the worst part, because when somebody dies like that, they stop breathing, all of a sudden they start again, and that's it. And of course my mother-in-law got it as well. So we went through the same thing, and it nearly killed my wife and her sister with this Alzheimer. And I've always supported Alzheimer, and I still support Alzheimer. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Doncan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I lack Councillor Checker's expertise in the treatment of Alzheimer's. However, I do have a bit of experience in the VCS over the last 15 years. And the thing that concerns me most is the motion that's being put forward is very specific about what should be done, and I don't think we should be frightened by being very specific about what we're wanting to do. In terms of strategies, the Alzheimer's Society worked very closely with some of the VCS organisations in Sunderland. One, Sunderland Action on Dementia, and also people that now go to North East Dementia Care, which is in St Anne's, which is in Pennywell. The Alzheimer's Society changed its strategy, which was from one of support, and I understand why they changed it, to one of cure. The partnership that was between Sunderland Action on Dementia and the Alzheimer's Society meant that Sunderland Action on Dementia lost their assets because they transferred the assets to the Alzheimer's Society. So when we talk about strategies, strategies change. Statements of policy and what we're actually going to do and how we're going to do it don't, particularly when they're stated in this House, because that's when we're saying this is what we're going to do and this is what we're going to stand to. So I accept the well-meaningness of your comments, but let's do it. Let's say what we're going to do, and then let's do it within those committees that you've mentioned, but let's not be afraid to say it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Mullen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll not give the speech that I prepared because I want to get onto the next motion and hopefully pass that this evening as well. But there's just one point that I want to draw out, and it's a longer-term thinking one. Coming to Parliament soon is the backbencher assisted dying bill. And I say this as a sceptical supporter of assisted dying, that I think as that comes through Parliament and will quite likely pass with the support of the Prime Minister, I think it's important to make sure that dementia care is not diminished alongside that, so that there isn't a situation where assisted dying is actually a better provision than the care available, and ensuring that the quality of care is for people who don't want to take the assisted dying route, as is actively encouraged by health services in Canada, that the care will provide people with the quality of life that they're still comfortable, rather than it diminishing alongside the right to die. I was going to say more than that, but in the interest of time, I'll just say that the Conservative Group will support this, and hopefully we can try and get the next motion in the last 15 minutes as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Firstly, I'd start by saying while the original motion is very well intended and certainly from the heart, I'm disappointed that yet again we get a motion being brought to full council from that side of the chamber where due diligence hasn't been undertaken. Especially disappointed tonight because dementia is such an important topic. Most of us in the room at some point in our lives will be affected by dementia, be it family, friend, neighbour, colleague, residents, communities, or even receiving the diagnosis ourselves. And for me, as a registered mental health nurse, as well as a citizen of the city, it's crucial that those with dementia are diagnosed well, supported well, live well, and when the time comes, that they die well and have a dignified death. Had time been taken to undertake due diligence, it would have been clearly apparent that across the Cabinet portfolios and the wider Council that dementia has been and is a key priority. Those living with dementia often have multiple presenting needs, and the diagnosis itself cannot be seen in isolation and must and does include wider system partners to look at meeting the whole needs of the person and their support network and carers. We've got the Health and Wellbeing Board, Age and Well Board, Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny, which you have representation on. All you needed to do was ask about what was happening. You could have came to me, asked me about my portfolio, and I've been able to tell you like the Active Sunderland strategy and what's being done there for individuals.
We absolutely are.
Of course we are.
Carry on, Councillor Jones. Carry on, members.
So due diligence would have highlighted lots of plans and actions already in place that demonstrate dementia is a priority across the city. And that is why tonight I support the amended motion proposed by the Deputy Leader and offer assurances that we are committed to a detailed action plan, because actions speak louder than words. It's clear to me that the Council and its partners want individuals that have dementia to live a healthy life for as long as possible in their local communities, and that when someone's health deteriorates, they receive the best possible care, because sadly, those with dementia will either die with or by dementia. However, we can't ignore that the health and social care systems are what we call broken, haven't worked in it,
I call it chronically underfunded for the past 14 years of the previous government. So I was pleased to see £600 million in the autumn budget for social care and 22.6 billion put into the health budget, along with additional commitments to tackle waiting lists, increase appointments and scans, and increase carer allowance thresholds. These are the first critical steps in repairing the mess that the new Labour government has inherited. Unfortunately, there is no overnight solution, and it will take time. But I'm confident now under the Labour government that there is the political will to fix dementia care, and that our Labour group will continue to ensure that dementia is a key priority for residents across Sunderland, Washington, Houghton and Hetton. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Gibson, you have the right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The motion, even as amended, is a big step forward. So I'm prepared to accept the amendment in principle, but and we will see what emerges over the coming few years. And we will hold the boards to account and see what happens. So I will accept it in principle, but with the proviso that we will monitor it. Thank you.
We will now move to the vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If the officer could open the vote, please.
Rather than go on to the electronic vote, does everyone agree with the amendment? Agreed? Thank you. That's carried. Rather than me reading out the new substantive motion, are we happy to move to the motion as it reads, a full substantive motion? Yep, yep. We will now move to the vote on the substantive motion. Agreed? That's great. Thank you. We will now deal with the notice of motion, which is titled Apprenticeships for Care Experienced Young People. I call upon Councillor Butler to read and move the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In Sunderland, 40% of care experienced young people aged 19 to 21 are in education or employment, compared to 51% nationally. The proportion of care experienced young people not in education, employment or training is significantly higher than the general population. Apprenticeships can help close this gap, but care experienced young people often require additional support to start and sustain their apprenticeships. Apprenticeships offer a key opportunity for care experienced young people to gain skills and employment. However, they face significant barriers that they need targeted support to overcome. This motion recognises the great work that Together for Children has done in developing apprenticeships for care experienced young people by recognising the value in supporting care experienced young people to strive to achieve their goals and the importance of offering opportunities to help them thrive. Addressing the challenges for those who are care experienced applying for an apprenticeship through the programme, providing financial support via bursary and discretionary payment system, providing housing support via a dedicated housing advice worker, providing mentoring, ensuring they receive guidance and assistance throughout their apprenticeship journey, monitoring the success of the apprenticeship programme to adapt, develop further where needed, developing strong partnerships with local employers, educational institutions to expand apprenticeship opportunities, treating being care experienced as a protected characteristic in all decision making until national legislation is introduced, recruiting care experienced young people into employment within the organisation. We call upon Sunderland organisations and agencies, including Sunderland City Council, the NHS and the wider business community, to follow this example. Additionally, we urge council members to be actively engaged and proactive in their roles as corporate parents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Martin Heron, do you second the motion?
I do, Madam Mayor, and reserve the right to speak.
Councillor Butler, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Today I'd like to address everybody in an issue that calls on us to step up for our care experienced young people. Here in Sunderland, only 40% of care experienced individuals aged 19 to 21 are in education or employment, a rate significantly lower than the national average of 51%. This gap represents missed potential and a shared responsibility. We owe it to these young people to ensure they have the opportunities that they deserve. In recent weeks, I've met with several care experienced young people within my portfolio, and I've been deeply inspired by their ambition and resilience. They are determined to build meaningful lives and pursue their dreams, and they shouldn't have to face these challenges alone. As corporate parents, meaning all of us in this chamber, and across our community, it is our duty to provide a foundation of support and ensure that they feel valued. Together for Children responded to this call by creating a new kind of apprenticeship programme tailored specifically to support care experienced young people. With Sunderland City Council's decision to recognise care experience as a protected characteristic, we've been able to go further. We've ring-fenced 4 apprenticeship opportunities exclusively for care experienced youth, offering positions across admissions, people services, transformation and social care. These apprenticeships aren't just jobs, the foundations for sustainable and fulfilling careers. What we've learned from previous placements is that young people need a robust package of support, more than just an apprenticeship. They need guidance to become work ready, manage the balance between formal study and on-the-job learning, and overcome outside pressures that might arise. To meet these needs, we designed a fully supportive journey from recruitment to employment. We eliminated the standard application process. Instead of training in-house staff volunteers as accredited mentors and appointing an apprenticeship ambassador, an inspiring young person who's experienced both the apprenticeship and care journey firsthand. We've also established close links with our training providers to streamline access to the £3,000 government apprenticeship bursary. To support our apprentices, even before their first year, we've arranged pre-commencement meetings with mentors, managers, personal advisors and virtual school representatives to ensure everything was in place. We even host a pre-meet dinner for all 4 apprentices, encouraging them to get to know each other, form a peer network and support each other from the start. Mentorship lies at the heart of this programme. Our mentors meet with apprentices regularly, not only to discuss work, but to help them navigate the unique challenges they face. At the programme's end, we bring everyone back together in a final employment support meeting to discuss future opportunities, whether within Together for Children or beyond. And already the impact is clear. The recent apprentice intake received 9 applications, and while we could only place 4 of those apprentices, the interest speaks volumes. The demand is there, that is clear. We are looking at expanding this approach in partnership with Sunderland City Council, SCAS, Gen 2 and others who can use the same model to create more opportunities for care experienced youth. All connected organisations have apprentice positions to offer. They just need to ring-fence them for these young people. Meanwhile, our city continues to show its commitment to young people's development with initiatives like the Sunderland Skills Academy and the newly funded Crownworks Studios, which will bring the creative sector jobs here to Sunderland. To truly realise this vision, we need a collective commitment. I call on every organisation within our city, the City Council, Gen 2, the NHS and our business community to join us in these efforts. As corporate parents, we can ensure that our care experienced young people have the stability, encouragement and opportunities they need to thrive. Together we are building a Sunderland where every young person, regardless of their background, can achieve their full potential. Let's keep moving forward and let's make this vision a reality. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. Under section 8.1 of the duration of the meeting, can we extend it? I understand it's quite important. I feel that it probably should be heard.
Needs to be seconded.
Seconded.
Seconded. Is that agreed? Are there any amendments? Would anyone like to speak on the motion?
Madam Mayor, we've had prior notice from councillors Crosby, Curtis, Mullen, Guy and Elms. Councillor Heron, was that? Had his hand up, yeah. Councillor Scanlon. So, Madam Mayor, the speakers are councillors Crosby, Curtis, Mullen, Guy, Elms, Heron and Scanlon. And there is a right of reply to Councillor Butler.
Councillor Crosby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak on this issue because I think it's both urgent and deeply important to ensure that young people in our care have a fair chance at securing apprenticeships and building stable, independent lives. I'm a member of the Supportive Parent Committee along with Councillor Butler, and we've heard firsthand from some of the young people about some of the problems they face, and it's amazing some of the prejudice they told us about. If an employer hears that somebody's from a children's home, they just don't want to give them an interview, no matter how good they are actually at the apprenticeship position. So I'd just like to say that there are a lot of other problems they face, like financial strains, the lack of accessible professional and housing advice, and we as their local council should help them to break down these barriers so they can thrive. We know that care experience profoundly shapes lives, and we should treat it as a protected characteristic, just as we do with other vulnerable groups. It's time we set an example by urging not only our council, but also the NHS and local businesses to hire and support these young people as though they were family. After all, they're part of our community's future. I propose that we work with local employers and council colleagues to develop apprenticeship schemes tailored to these young people's needs. By doing so, we send a clear message that we believe in them and we are committed to giving them the same opportunities and support as anyone else. Thank you.
Councillor Curtis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Right, first of all, I want to say thank you to Councillor Michael Butler for bringing this to Council today. I think it's really important we should be doing this because we should be supporting our care experienced people from transitioning to where they become. We need to build on the confidence. I think as councillors, we should be reaching out to the employers in the region, such as, like, I've got plans to reach out to EDF and some of the other places in Doxford where we have, like, connections to. I think we could get people who's involved in Sunderland Bid involved, and I also think that the people in the other councils in the combined authority should take a role in this as well, because if we can do it, so should the other councils in the area. Now, being on the Children's Scrutiny Committee and also working close with Together for Children, we know that there's still that, how can we put it, discrimination about people who's been in care. That it's the 21st century, that should be gone. These people deserve just as much right to not be discriminated. So I'm really pleased that we've taken a step to make it a protective characteristic for these young people. So I would recommend that everybody supports it, and you as a councillor, go there and get behind it, reach out to the employees in the community and get them the apprenticeships and give them the support. There's also other monetary funds within the council that we have, such as the Young Persons Industrial Fund, where they can come to us for money to help them get apprenticeships. So if they need like specialist clothing or equipment to do them apprentices, we can give that to them and it doesn't cost them anything because it's free. So that's all I would like to say on the subject, because I know time's going on. And so thank you for bringing this, and I fully support the idea. So let's get it done. Thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Mullen.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I'll keep this very brief. I thought it was positive to hear what Michael Butler outlined in relation to what the council is already doing, particularly, I think, the removal of traditional routes into employment, removing, for example, the traditional application and job interview process, and also good to hear about the initiative taken to build social circles. As you will already be aware, children in care do disproportionately end up in the criminal justice system, and so building those social circles and actually providing a greater degree of support with transition into adulthood, which is normally done by families but behind the scenes in a tacit manner which is difficult to detect, I think is the right step. And it's good to see that that support is being offered. I think my one question would be around expansion. Who else is going to pick it up, and how will this expand out to more people? I'm sure he can pick that up in his closing remarks. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Guy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As an informal declaration, I am the local authority's governor on the virtual school. And we actually had a meeting yesterday in which I showed them the motion that was going to be presented today. Cannot tell you how overjoyed they were to see the motion, particularly in its last details about the pursuit for the council to create new opportunities for cared, experienced young people who other members have talked about having significant barriers in comparison. So they were absolutely overjoyed. And I asked them, you know, what do you think that, you know, potential next steps would do for cared for young people? Because throughout our meetings, we constantly have to ask ourselves, and everyone here as part of their corporate responsibility should do also, is would this be good enough for my child? What would I want for my child, if I had a child, that is? But I want to just take some time, particularly on, since it says including the council itself, to talk about some of the opportunities that can come from this. You know, it was identified as part of the city plan that there was a skills gap. There's been pursuance to the introduction of the HICSA and other initiatives, and having some ring-fenced apprenticeship positions for cared for young people can also fill that gap, or in part. But also as part of the apprenticeship levy that comes with it, also gives the council an opportunity to use that levy to reinvest in the council itself as part of a wider workforce initiative for ring-fenced apprenticeships for cared for young people. But also, because obviously it's been trialled out by TFC, but obviously due to the nature of that organisation, the types of apprenticeships that they are able to deliver are narrow in its context. And introducing, hopefully, some ring-fenced positions within the council also delivers greater choice and variation into the roles. You know, a lot of care experienced young people may be more tailored to a more vocational position, which, you know, Michael's previously said, you know, around like maybe social care, environmental services, housing, and being able to deliver on greater choice gives care experienced young people more opportunities and therefore more freedoms in order to pursue future careers and such within that field. So the more choice, the more freedoms, the more opportunities and the better futures that we can deliver for cared experienced young people. And I know that particularly in the virtual school they have been, and myself, have been wanting this for years and years and years, and I'm really, really, really proud that under the new administration of the council that they are taking significant steps in that direction. Members here know that I have a keen interest in all things NEET. Those who are served with on the Children Education Skills Scrutiny Committee will know that I do not stop talking about it, but as other members have said, there are barriers in place for this particular demographic, and as corporate parents, we need to take our responsibilities to the highest of seriousness and move forward and create these new opportunities and broaden the potential for cared for and cared experienced young people, and to really deliver the justice that they deserve. They're being wronged by the system and the market and in the way others may get employment opportunities, and now we can deliver kind of that justice for them and to deliver the opportunities and freedoms that they deserve. So thank you very much, really positive stuff, and I really appreciate it and look forward to see where it goes. Thank you.
Councillor Elms.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Today we're here to talk about a group of young people who are often find themselves sidelined by a system that should be lifting them up. Young people who have already faced unimaginable challenges but still dream big. They dream to find stability, of building futures that they can be proud of, and yet for so many of them, the doors of opportunity are closed. I know what it feels like to stand at a crossroads with no clear way forward. At 15, I lost a parent, and at 16, I was 250 miles away from home living in a bedsit with no flooring, just the nails that held the previous tenant's carpet. By 18, I had to make the agonizing choice between pursuing my education or financial support. I couldn't get an education and claim any form of benefit at the same time, so I was forced to choose between surviving and building a future. The pain of that decision, of feeling trapped by a system that didn't seem to care, stays with me to this day. But that experience made me who I am, and it's one of the reasons I am here now, to make sure that no young person has to face that choice ever again. Now let me tell you a story about someone close to me, someone whose journey captures the potential of every young care experienced person. My son's godfather, Matthew. He entered the care system at just 7 years old. His mother fell ill and was sectioned, and in one moment, Matthew's entire world turned upside down. He lost his family, his home, and any sense of stability. But there was one thing that no one could take away from him, his gift. Even as a little boy, Matthew was a showman through and through. He would sing and dance his heart out, filling whatever space he was in with his voice, his energy, his joy. He wasn't part of a stage school. He had no formal training, no coach to refine his talent. It was just there, a spark inside of him that no one else could see. No one in his life at that time believed that he could make something of it. But Matthew didn't give up. He believed in himself to hold on to that spark. Alone without guidance or encouragement, he honed his talent, he pushed himself, relying on sheer will and resilience. Today, he is a worldwide touring artist, performing to thousands across the globe every week. Imagine that, a little boy who went into the care system with nothing but a dream, now singing on stages that many could only dream of. Matthew's story is incredible, but let's be honest, it's also heartbreaking. Because as proud as I am of what he has achieved, I can't help but wonder what heights he could have reached if he'd had the support, the encouragement, and the resources to really focus on his dreams. If he had known that someone believed in him, not just when he made it on his own, but when he was that 7-year-old boy lost and alone. This motion calls on us in this chamber to make good on our role as corporate parents. That means practical support, bursaries so these young people aren't forced to choose between having a meal or affording a textbook, housing support so they don't end up worrying about where to sleep instead of where to study, apprenticeships so they have the ability to earn whilst they learn, and mentorships that give them the guidance and someone to turn to who truly believes in them. Imagine if we fully unlock the potential of every care experienced child. So to every care experienced young person, I say this: I see you, I hear you, we see your dreams, your resilience, your potential. This motion isn't just a policy, it's a promise that Sunderland is fighting for you and that this city believes in your future. Let's be the city that breaks these barriers, that opens doors, that gives every young person a shot at the future that they deserve. A place where every young person, regardless of their past, has a chance to build a better future. Thank you.
Councillor Martin Herron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a member of the City's Child Poverty Action Group, I'm proud to second this motion, which is designed to empower some of the most vulnerable young people in the city. I hope that you will all be able to support this motion and the work that we are doing to address all forms of child poverty, including, in the case of this motion, poverty of opportunity. In our city, care experienced young people are accessing education, employment and training after 16, significantly less than the national average. I applaud the work done already by Together for Children, and I was delighted to hear the work led by Councillor Butler to enable this council to go even further by ring-fencing apprentice positions and laying the groundwork to remove many of the common obstacles that these young people would face that other young people would not. I echo Councillor Butler's call to organisations in the city to join this work and join the council in its efforts to improve access to apprenticeships for care experienced young people. Care leavers experience very different challenges to others of a similar age. Every year, around 39,000 children enter the care system, which is over 100 children a day. England alone has over 83,000 children in care, which is a 23% increase over the last decade. 10% of these children will experience what is known as high instability, moving from placement to placement 3 or more times in a year. As you can imagine, this can have very severe effects on a child emotionally and educationally. Care leavers make up 25% of the adult homeless population. 50% of under 21s in contact with the criminal justice system have spent time in care, and approaching 25% of the adult prison population have spent time in care. Care experienced children are more at risk of interacting with the criminal justice system in early adulthood than their peers. Among care experienced children, 52% were convicted of a criminal offence by the academic year they turned 24, as opposed to 13% of children who had not experienced care. Nationally, 13% of 19 to 21-year-olds are not in education, employment or training. This rises to 38% among care leavers. 47% of the population have entered higher education by the age of 19, compared to 14% of care leavers. Finally, perhaps a couple of brighter statistics. Care experience applicants are 179% more likely to apply for health and social care degrees and 50% more likely to apply for nursing and midwifery as non-care experienced students. I apologise for bombarding you with statistics. I've taken them from the excellent website of the charity Home for Good, which is based in the North East, and I use them to illustrate that the challenges and barriers that care experienced children face are very real, and to a young person without the familial support that most of us rely on, very daunting. These statistics are why this motion and the work we are doing is so important. It's not preordained or written in stone that these figures will never change, and providing more support and routes to success is one way that we address the poverty of opportunities that care experienced young people continually face. However, there is only so much the Council can do on its own, which is why it is so important that our partner organisations come on board to help us in this vital work, which has the potential to transform the lives of these young people. As corporate parents, we have a responsibility to these young people, and I know that this is a responsibility members in this chamber take very seriously indeed. As corporate parents, we should champion these young people in the way that we would champion our own children, and this motion is a way to do so. So I'll finish by again repeating that I hope you can all support this motion and support our care experienced young people.
Thank you. Councillor Scanlon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Butler, for bringing this to here to Council tonight. I'm an employer in the city and I employ a care experienced apprentice. I've had this young lady for about 15 months now, and I've asked her permission today to share her story with you. So I'm going to tell a story this evening. So this young lady lived with her mother until the age of 10 when she found her mother dead from a drug overdose. She had no other family other than an uncle, and she went to live with her uncle. Of course, the uncle had a real high-flying job. He couldn't really take care of the young lady, who I'm trying desperately not to identify and say her name. So she went into the care of Together for Children. She was in a foster placement. She absconded from that foster placement. She was sofa surfing in Southwick. She was at Bede College, but she wasn't going to Bede College. She was spending her nights and days with just the wrong crowd, totally the wrong crowd. Someone brought her to see me because she needed to deal with her uncle's death, the funeral, the probate. She needed to deal with everything. She was the sole beneficiary. She was the only relative. She had no other family. This young girl couldn't do anything. She couldn't speak. She couldn't raise her head. She would nod. She would shake. She didn't have a clue what was going on. She was 18-year-old. She'd never done anything in her life like this before. She'd hardly had a life. Anyway, after a while, we were getting through the business with an adult who was helping her. And I thought, this young girl's, nobody's ever going to give her a job. Nobody's going to give her a chance. So I asked her if she'd like to do a couple of weeks' work experience in our office. I didn't know how it would turn out. I didn't know whether she'd be any good, whether she would like it or what. But anyway, she came. And they do need a lot of support. And she was with us for about 3 months before she eventually really opened up. She was supported by all of the staff. We got her a lovely apartment. She said to me, "Linda, I don't know how to pay an electricity bill. No one's taught me how to pay a bill. Why do I pay water? Pay water rates. What's water rates?" She didn't know how to go shopping. She didn't know how to go to the supermarket. She needed all of this support, and she got it, luckily, from all of the members of staff in our office. Eventually, we thought, well, we'd better progress her a little bit. You know, every child needs some qualifications. And I was beginning to see that she was quite bright, especially when she was telling us off about how we use the IT and we weren't putting things properly in the diary. And I thought, well, yes, come on, we'll give her a try. So we put her on an apprenticeship, a level 3 apprenticeship, and she has just about finished that now. It's a year. And the college have said it's the best apprentice they've ever had, and she will get her certificate, level 3, with a distinction. She has such a thirst for knowledge. She's a clever girl, but it's a chance that kids who are in care, who are, care experienced, sometimes don't get this. They don't get a chance, and people I must say to you all, if you have any influence, anyone with business, please give them a chance. They do need support. They do need a good few weeks support before you can even look at their apprenticeship. I've had apprentices who haven't been in care experienced children, and who have come in and they've started to do the work for 3 or 4 months and then said, we just don't want to do it. We've done enough. We'll keep the job, but we don't want to do the homework. This little girl loved it. She loved it. And now she wants me to put her through a training course to become a legal exec. And hopefully one day, she said, do you ever think I could become a solicitor? And I thought, oh yeah. It doesn't take that much to become a solicitor. So hopefully, that's what she's aspiring to. And if we can help her do that, it could take her 10 years, but she's got time on her side. I think I'll have retired long by then. But, she can do it, and we've got to give these kids a chance. And I'm now looking for a second apprentice, so I will be looking for a care experienced apprentice. But the great kids, and I would really ask you all to please support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Butler, you have the right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and obviously thank you to all members who I think are going to support this and have spoken, especially the inspirational stories we heard from members there. Members, this is grown-up politics. This is what builds trust in politicians. It's not the sound bites, it's the things that make an impact on people's lives. So I think the residents of Sunderland and the care experience youths would like to see this and see more of this moving forward in council meetings. I don't think we realise the impact that this might have. This is where social mobility really hits home. You know, this is the potential not only to change lives, but change families, change estates, you know, and help people really move forward. But we must act. That's the difference. We must act. Deeds, not words, is the famous saying. We'd look out to the business community, and obviously Councillor Scanlon has already said there that she has a care experienced person under her pupillage, which is fantastic, and looking for another one, which I'm sure I can help find. Regarding Councillor Mullins' mention of the expansion, I would love to say that. We're already working close with the council to hopefully get an apprentice there. The NHS, I want to make some inroads with the NHS and speak to my colleague on my right, Councillor Checker, on perhaps doing some of this, and also across SCAS, Sunderland Care and Support. As Councillor Heron mentioned, there's a disproportionate amount of care experienced youths looking for apprenticeships and jobs and degrees within the health and social care sector. But we can also go a little bit further with the developments in the city, and that's why we do this, to benefit the next generation. Although this generation will get some of that benefit as well, looking at the Crown Works and the Skills Academy. And I'll be putting this into the Child Poverty Action Group as well, which I'm looking at setting up. And then we'll be expanding that out to all members for their consultation as well. But we want some of them objectives to work towards. But one thing I'll be putting forward is a little bit of emphasis on the care experience residents of the city. It's been really positive discussions tonight, and I'm really glad that all members appear to be in support of this. I'm sure you all know I'm not about sound bites. I will be bringing collaborative and progressive motions to council. That's how I work, that's how I operate, in looking at changing people's lives. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We'll now move to the vote on the motion. Are we happy? Great. Carried. Right, I'm just conscious of the time, and it's now 7:30. We have got one more motion to go through, which is going to be quite a lengthy motion. I'm going to leave it to the floor if everyone's happy to carry the next motion up to the next meeting. Agreed? Okay, that concludes tonight's... Sorry.
Before colleagues leave the chamber, can I just ask all members to ensure they clear their rubbish and the cans and the pots, because I've noticed the last two council meetings that members of staff have had to clean up after councillors, and it's not appropriate for them to do so. Can I ask everyone on all sides